It was 6 months ago when we had ourselves Joshua Rogers winning the first of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercups. And well, since then, a lot has changed. And now, yes, we're in a crazy world, but drivers are ready to go racing once again in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. But before we get to that, we've got a little extra special treat for you first. It's the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. It's a series that's open to all on iRacing, and they can compete over the course of the racing week. Then what happens is on Saturday, 30 of the best racers who's competed over the course of the week get that chance to race on the big stage. And we got some big and fascinating names here who will be doing battle. We're running here for race weekend number 1 at Circuit Park Zandvoort, which I'm not going to lie to you, ladies and gentlemen, is one of my favourite racetracks in the world. But we've then got ourselves Circuit Barcelona Catalunya coming up in 1 week's time. We finish off May at Donington Park. 3 very different racetracks, 3 very interesting storylines. Then in June, we go to where else? Circuit de la Sarthe, before the longest track ever in World Championship history, the Nürburgring Nordschleife on July 4th. Silverstone, race number 6 on July 18th. Road Atlanta makes our first American racetrack in round number 7 on August 1st. Back to the UK, with Brands Hatch on August 15th, then Spa-Francorchamps on August 29th, and Monza rounds out your 10-race meeting. So that's what we've got to look forward to. But what we've got right now is we've got ourselves a 20-minute race about to come up. These drivers are running for money as well as anything else. Porsche are bringing more and more prize money to the entire ecosystem of their involvement in sim racing, and the people who win here today will be getting themselves $500 for just winning the race. But then also, there's $10,000 in season winnings as well. We'll talk more about that as we progress through the season. So, money on the line, pride on the line, and of course, in the next couple of months, we're going to start thinking about who is going to be the 2020 Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup champion as well. We've got interviews coming up soon with both your champion from last year, Joshua Rogers, as well as the driver who came so close, Max Verstappen. That is all to come, but now what we're going to do, we're going to hand it over to your commentary team for this, the first of our weekend's action, with commentary for the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. It's Connery Maddock and Paul Smith.
Thank you very much, Will. We've got a lot to look forward to here today. The first time we go World Championship racing in 2020 here on iRacing with Porsche as well. I certainly cannot wait to get things started. And Paul, like Will said in the little pre-show ad-lib there, that we're going to see these GT4 cars out here first before we see those World Championship professionals.
Yes, hello everybody, hope you're all well, and this is going to be a very intriguing and hard-fought race, is this, because it's a single-make car, single-make series is this, obviously, with the 718 Porsche Cayman GT4, and these drivers, they've had a bit of time with the car now, so they've learnt what the quirks of the car is, how they can get the best out of this car, and certainly they really need to push hard and get themselves a good qualifying here, because overtaking is not impossible around here, but it is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not gifted chances on a silver platter here. You really have to construct your own luck here at Zandvoort if you're going to make any sort of forward progress, which is why, as you say, qualifying here is so important. We're just going to get ourselves into that session in just a couple of moments, but with these GT4 cars, of course, not as powerful as the 911 GT3 Cup cars that we'll see in just around about an hour's time, but they can still give some fantastic racing.
They certainly can. We've seen in some of the official races here on iRacing how close these cars can really race close together. They've not got the most downforce on these cars, so they're not going to be as affected through the corners, so they can follow that little bit closer to each other and therefore get the better run and give ourselves some closer action. So definitely these drivers, they've got a great opportunity to run close, give us some close action, but hopefully we won't see too much shenanigans as well, because at a track where it's difficult to overtake, you may see one or two maybe questionable moves, but hopefully everybody complies with each other and that they're able to get the moves done.
Speaking of shenanigans, if they do happen though, well, at least we've got iRacing's new damage model in effect on these cars. So instead of the cars just deforming a little bit here and there like the old damage model, we actually see bits and pieces flying off as well. Hopefully we don't see too much of that in this one, but it is there if required. But I certainly can't wait to get things going here. And this is also perhaps a chance for those drivers that just did not quite get themselves into the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup, the main event here today. This will still give them a chance to show everyone what they're made of, and even potential teams that they might get picked up by as well.
Well, this is it. A lot of these drivers who are competing in this all tried to, or the majority of them tried to qualify for the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. And yeah, they didn't quite make it into that series, so this is the next best thing for them to get this opportunity here on the Saturday before the main event. And as you mentioned, a few drivers may be getting themselves familiar with some teams, but some of them representing their teams and really doing a job for the team to represent them even at this level.
Yeah, absolutely. Still on a relatively big stage here, even if you're not in the Porsche Heuer Esports Super Cup. Doing well here in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, then that is an accolade upon itself. So we'll see who comes out on top in this one to start us off for 2020 World Championship racing action here. And we can get our qualifying session up on the screen. There is Peter Berryman, I believe, heading his way down in towards turn number 1 there. We'll actually go on board with him as he tries to negotiate this sometimes very, very tricky Zandvoort circuit. They've got 8 minutes left in qualifying, and now the first couple of fast laps are going to start to come through.
Yeah, they certainly are, as come out of Hugenholtz. That tight left-hand hairpin, and then we've got through these sweeping S's now before you head on to the back half of the circuit. A couple of the club circuits split off there at this point, and then through this long sweeping right-hander. Get your line right through here, because you want to get on the power nice and early before you head into Masters. This turn number 7, up over the curb goes Pete, and he's pushing hard in towards turn 8, a very difficult corner to get your line right through. I've always found in the past. Get yourself over towards the middle of the track for the left-hander here at 9, and then you're back on the trip home, the second half of the lap now, heading towards the Hans Ernst chicane. This turns 10 and 11. Really tight, hard braking zone for this 90-degree right-hander. Get the car right in on the left curb, up over the right curb then, and then onto the brakes hard for Kumo, the right-hander. Penultimate corner, and then Ari Lyondike, the final corner, named after the great driver himself, two-time Indy 500 champion. And then down the start and finish straight, across the line. Lap time is 1:43.498. He goes fastest as Pete.
Yep, he does, as those lap times start to trickle in. I'm seeing Lorena actually getting himself up into that second spot for the moment. Josh Thompson provisionally third at the moment, but things are chopping and changing as these times come through. We still have yet at least the majority of the field yet to set themselves a qualifying time in this one, so we'll have to wait and see where they file through. I'm talking about the likes of Paschalis Gergis, Mariano Sorica, Antiohola have not set lap times just yet, but they're starting to come through now. Simone Maria Marceno up into second place there, so doing well for himself there, but really with the tyres trying to come up to temperature here, Paul, the second lap would typically be the faster of the two that we'll get.
Well, look at the times coming in now. We've got Mikkel Gerd with a 43.3. In fact, no, Sasha Gall then coming in with a 43.2. So the times are coming in thick and fast now. This is what we want to see now. All these fast times coming in as drivers are on like the middle of their second lap into their third lap. So, into the end of the first lap, should I say, into the second lap. So definitely these drivers now pushing to the limit, trying to get as fast a lap time as possible, but you can see how close this field is as the 17 goes around, and that's Ronaldo Lorena spinning round, and so he won't be able to complete his second lap there.
Yep, he won't. So he just has that banker lap that he said that he set at the start of the session. He won't be able to get back out there and be able to set another lap. We only have 2 flying laps that these drivers are able to do in this situation. You can't take a break between them either. You can't bring it down on towards pit lane to get a fresh set of tires or anything like that.
Nope, that's it. Once you're out the pits, that's your opportunity. And we're going to see how we get on now towards the end of this. We've got people like Matti Piatella still heading around. He's coming towards the end of his second lap. We've got the 13 car as well out there getting the laps in. Marino Sorica down in 13th. You'd expect him to be a little bit higher up than he is, and Matti Piatella moving up to 5th place because Thomas Gibson from Core Sim Racing, the Englishman, great lap from him, goes to the top of the leaderboard. Here comes Marino Sorica now. What can he do?
Yeah, across the line he goes from P17 up to where it's inside the top 10 for Mariano Sorica, so in P number 9 to be exact, but he's only around about a tenth of a second behind the next driver there of Martti Piatella. You can see the times up on screen for you at the moment, but a more notable gap as we see Pessi Jean going to pole position for the moment, just 54 thousandths of a second ahead of Thomas Gibson's time, so this is a very, very close and competitive field at the moment. More drivers coming across the start-finish line to set their laps. Kim Eriksson up into P6 on the starting grid here today. But time is running out and laps are running out for these drivers.
Yeah, of course, these drivers have to get this time in before the clock strikes 0. It's not like some of the qualifying where you could just carry on and finish your lap once the clock has gone 0. You have to get your lap times in before the timer goes to 0. So definitely these drivers, there's a couple of drivers who have yet to set a lap time and they're still out there warming up their tyres. They've got to get a shift on here because they need to at least get a banker lap in, really.
Yeah, you really, really have to, but 2.5 minutes left in the session, but for those drivers that have already set those 2 flying laps that they're allotted, then they can't improve. There are still a couple of drivers out there, though. Lorenda is still out there running laps despite running out of valid flying laps that he's able to manage, so he's just getting a little bit of last-ditch practice in before we go racing here today. There's one of the Heuer Esports cars out there as well, as I believe as he's heading his way through there. That is the 882, so that is Antiohola down in 24th at the moment on the starting grid. He really, really needs a good lap here if he's going to have any sort of fortune in the race.
I won't be improving either because this is lap 3, so he's had his 2 flying laps, so time has run out for him to get a lap time in. There are a couple of drivers still out there just starting laps as well. Arthur Le Hook and Charlie Summers, they're out there at the moment getting their... They're going to have one opportunity only for these two to be able to get a lap time in here.
Yeah, there's simply not enough time to get back around to set that second lap. So Le Hook, number 3, out there. And, well, he doesn't have a qualifying time set at the moment. So, like you said, he's going to have to get a move on. He's currently heading his way up to the S's. No, up to the S's, excuse me. He's heading his way through turn 7 at the moment, through towards turn number 8. So coming through the middle sector at the moment, but still, it's a pretty demanding qualifying here, Paul, considering how close those times are.
Yeah, when you consider that those times first down to 22nd, down to 23rd now as Charlie Collins puts a lap time in 7th place. First to 23rd covered by less than a second. Oscar Mangan is the first driver in 24th, over 1 second behind your pole time, so it's really competitive field out there, but this is what we expected, Connery. This is what we expected from a field this stacked.
Yeah, absolutely. But time is going to expire in just a couple of seconds' time. So Le Hook, will he be able to get a lap in here? I believe he will. Across the line he goes, but where does he go? Does he get a 1x? Did he get his lap invalid? No, it was a valid lap actually, but it was just only good enough for P28 in the grand scheme of things. So we can get that swapped over, and then we can take you through the starting grid for the first race of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. It looks a little bit like this. We'll get ourselves Thomas Petitjean on pole position with Thomas Gibson on that front row as well. It's all Thomas front row here for round number 1. Samuel Liber and Simone Maria Marceno bring things down to P4. Emanuele Petri in P5. Kim Eriksson in P6. Max Esterson will start in P7. Peter Berryman in P8. Marty Piatella will start in 9th place here today. Moreno Surica starting inside the top 10. And then you look outside the top 10 with Pasalis Georgis and Pekka Toivonen bringing things down to P number 12. Sasha Gole in P13. Camilio Pezzoli in P14. Mikael Gard in 15th place. Dakota Fripp will have to start 16th here today. Mika Harpanen in 17th place. Charlie Collins, P18 for him. Maxime Ramstein in P19. Simeon Lynch will start on the 20th grid spot. Sergio Agancio in P21, Ronaldo Lorena in P22. Josh Thompson starts 23rd as Mikko Nurmi will launch from the 24th spot. Oscar Mangan from 25th, Antihola 26th, Joni Takkanen in P27. Arthur Le Hook starts 28th, Jesus Cecilia in 29th, and Charlie Summers, the only driver not to set a qualifying time, he'll start at the very back of the starting grid. 30th place for him. We're just around about 15 seconds away from the start of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge here at Zandvoort. Drivers just getting themselves ready on the starting grid to go Porsche racing at Zandvoort. The GT4 engines rev, and now we go racing at Zandvoort. Petitjean gets a good launch from the front row. Thomas Gibson going to be swallowed up by the pack, it seems here, as Samuel Liber tries to go around his outside in towards turn number 1. Can he carry the speed with the camber through there? No, he can't. He'll have to reassess his situation and fight with Simone Maria Marceno instead, coming through the first sector here. But everything seems clean at the front, but there's been a big smash at the back. But these guys at front, very single file through the first sector as there's another car off in the background.
Yeah, Josh Thompson, Charlie Summers caught up in that. Mika Harpanen, all sorts of number of drivers caught up in that instant further back. It was on the exit of Tarzan as they all carry on through, but your leader's able to get through fine. That's not a problem for them. And just getting caught out maybe with cold tyres and not maybe giving quite enough room to one another, but in a 20-minute sprint race like this, you really need to make some moves and make them count. And if there's an instant in front of you, you've got to know how to avoid those instants as well. But going good so far at the front, the 9-car train here for the lead.
Yeah, and you can see things getting pretty close for P7 and 8. Esterson versus Berryman into the S's. But they will stay all single file coming through here, but there's still not a lot of breathing room to work with on the opening lap. Everyone keeping themselves tight together for the moment, but you can see the separation in the pack right now due to early incidents. We kind of have a leading train of about 10 cars at the moment, all drafting off of each other. Everyone else further back in the mid-pack, though, has started to spread out, but look at this leading train coming out of the final corner. Here is where one of the big slipstream passes can be managed here into turn number 1, but Gibson's not going to go for the move. Maria Marcheno, though, down the inside there at turn 1, passes Samuel Libert through the corner there. That is a big, authoritative move from the Altus Esports driver.
Yeah, the Italian really knows how to put a late braking effort in, and he made the apex. It wasn't a dive bomb, it was just a very, very good move down the inside into Tarzan. But now he's going to chase after this lead too. Thomas Gibson is his next target. Very tricky driver to be able to make your way past here, but certainly Simon Maria Marchena will be doing everything he can to be able to move forward into the top of the field.
Yeah, so basically podium position still up for grabs, very much so inside this leading train, and the draft will actually help to keep these guys together a little bit. They were close in qualifying regardless, so close in clear air in terms of their pace, but the draft is just going to exacerbate things here. However slightly weak it is in the GT4 cars, it can still keep groups like this together, and this is what we're seeing right now, especially when they're close on pace by default.
Yeah, you get these slipstreaming battles that you generally find that the less overall downforce that a car has, the more that these drivers can run right under the rear bumper of the car in front. So they're not going to be as affected by the draft in terms of having grip through the corners, but they are certainly going to feel the effect of that down the start and finish straight once again. And Thomas Gibson's having a little look to the inside of Tarzan. Not going to happen. Whoa. But there are moves further back.
Esterson into the back of Petri through turn number 1, and that was a hopeful move there from Esterson. Goes deep on the brakes, line being cut off there by that number 34, front to rear contact into turn number 1, and well, Petri's going to come off the worst in that one, unfortunately for him. He gets cycled back into P10 here, and he's off, well, he's not able to latch onto the back of this leading train, so that is a massive, unfortunate thing to happen there to Petri, as Esterson just simply went too deep and too optimistic.
Yeah, a little bit too deep, but that's something that can happen there at Tarzan. It's such a heavy braking zone from a high speed straight in towards that turn number 1, and it's a cambered corner as well. You can make moves around the outside as well there. I've seen that in the past. So you don't just have to go for the inside around there, but generally you'll find drivers hug that inside line, try to block off that move to get the better run through that hairpin. But yeah, just that little bit later on the braking, catching out the car in front, and where went Petri down to 10th place at the moment. But it's this lead battle here, Connery, that I'm really intrigued by, because I just get the feeling that Petitjean is holding up Thomas Gibson and the rest of this queue at the moment. Now, is that a case of he's at his maximum pace, or is it just a case of he's maybe not quite feeling as comfortable in that car in a race scenario?
Well, remember in qualifying, he was only 54 thousandths of a second faster than Gibson's fastest time, so this could be just the true pace inside of this leading pack at the moment. Not much to separate them at all, and it's going to have to require maybe some desperate moves a little bit further back to try and improve position. We're 15 minutes, well, 14 minutes closer to that figure before the end of this race at the moment, and all of the podium positions still hang in the balance. But Gibson's playing this one patient at the moment. He hasn't gone for big lunges like the car behind him has gone for, Simone Maria Marcheno. Gibson's just stayed in line and is just biding his time, waiting for the right opportunity, because if you go for this risky move too early, then that's just going to detriment your race. You're going to fall back, at worst, towards the rear of the train. So you just have to make this move calculated, and you has to size up your competition, see where he's weak, see where he's strong, and try to use that to your advantage.
But the problem is, if you follow the car in front too long, you end up copying their line, copying their braking zones as well. You get sort of, it's almost hypnotic how it happens, and you end up in with that driver in front, and before you know it, at one point you were quicker, next you're on their pace or slightly slower. I'll tell you who's having a little look. In third place, Simone Maria Marchena. It's getting a little bit more eager now behind, so definitely has the opportunity to be able to push on and to try and get this opportunity of a second place and battle for the lead.
Yeah, even though Gibson's deciding to take a more passive approach at the moment, that doesn't mean that Simone Maria Marchena will, and that's definitely been the case from races that we've seen him take part in. He's always the really, really nice guy when he comes in for an interview after the race, but on track he can be absolutely ruthless, so Gibson has to have his wits about him here.
Yeah, he does. But Gibson is a sensible driver. He's an experienced driver as well. He knows where to place his car and knows how to manage a gap. We've seen him in other cars as well, and seen him be able to lead from the front and push on. But we've got that little pack just behind the front three. Samuel Lebert, Kim Eriksson, Max Esterson, Pete Berriman all together as well. So it's not just that podium group that are actually pulling away from this fourth place battle.
Oh, Gibson made a slight error ahead of these guys, but Marchena simply wasn't close enough to be able to capitalize on that opportunity. He was heading through turn 7, where he just clattered over the curb a little bit and lost his line. Marchena was there, ready to pounce, but he just couldn't find the gap to be able to do so. But that mistake still hasn't cost Gibson all that much, since he's still locked onto the back of the race-leading car. That number 10 of Thomas Petitjean. So it's still a Thomas 1-2, but is there going to be Simone trying to mix things up there at the front? I have to wonder as this race ticks down.
Yeah, it's 11 and a half minutes remaining in this race, so still plenty of time to be able to compete in this one, that's for sure. But as they head on through the final corner, Ari Leyendyk as that corner, and down the start-finish straight. This is the best opportunity for Kim Eriksson on Samuel Lebert. What's he going to do? Feigns a little bit of interest, but then falls back in. So he's not feeling quite close enough to make a move yet into turn 1.
No, he's not, and that seems to be the case up and down this leading pack at the moment. I say it's a leading pack, although we're starting to see some slight separation. The top 3 trying to break away from the rest of them here, and if they're able to do so, they'll give them a lot more space to battle in and amongst themselves without having to be threatened from cars deeper in the pack trying to improve their own position, which is always a luxury if you have that buffer zone to work with.
Yeah, it gives you that little bit of comfort. It makes, especially if you're Marchena in third place, it just means that you can focus in front, just focus on that car in front to try and make the move. And speaking of making the move, he's having a look on Gibson. Around goes Gibson. Oh, absolute nightmare there. Gibson's dropping down 10th place. He's going to lose more places, but there's a replay of it. Just into the back of Gibson there.
Yeah, Simone can't be doing that. Coming through the middle sector, that was a bit of an error in judgment, I will say. Again, a bit too deep, and straight into the back of Gibson, who's now been demoted all the way down into P11. There's still a little bit of time for him to recover a couple of positions after that, but he's going to be absolutely fuming about that contact, because he couldn't have done anything.
No, there's very little Gibson could do there, and Marchena, he'll have to take the finger point of blame right there at that one. It wasn't the best. Not really a traditional overtaking spot into turn 8 as well. You can make moves there, but again, it's you've got to have a little bit of compliance. But he wasn't at any point with his nose in there. It was just front to back contact, and around goes Gibson.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, since Gibson through the opening portions of this race. Very, very strong indeed, but now he has to recover from P11. There's the gap between P1 and P2. Petit-Jean, as a result of that little incident, he's been able to gap the cars behind a little bit. It stands at about a second back to Marciano. And Marciano, it was, even though it was a big impact in terms of Thomas Gibson's race with having been spun around, Marciano doesn't actually have a lot of damage to the front end of his Porsche, his 718 Cayman GT4 car. So he should still be on the pace that he's going to be expecting here, but it might not be enough to try and keep tabs on your race leader.
Yeah, it's enough of a gap that the leader can just focus on hitting the marks, getting the lines right, not making any mistakes. It's now all up to Marciano to try and catch up to your race leader, to put the pressure on again, because with 8 minutes remaining, now time is starting to run out. But we're looking at this battle now for third place. This is crucial now. This is the podium positions right here through the final corner. Once again, important to get your run out there spot on. Kim Eriksson, we've seen him have a little fin here and there in towards Tarzan. Having a look this time, but again, nothing happening there. He's not confident enough, and he's not getting close enough to make that move.
No, he's not. He's just been having... He's been showing the nose here and there into turn one, but hasn't committed to any move just yet. And, well, time and laps are starting to run out at this point. I'm looking at about 4 laps to go next time the race leader heads his way across the line. So, yeah, not a lot of time to try and negotiate this one. There's Peter Berryman just on the back of Esterson through the S's, basically giving him a push coming through that section as they head through turn 6 now. This downhill right-hander, which is so fun, especially in high downforce cars, but in these GT4s, it is brilliant as well. And now coming through towards turn number 8 then, and Berryman still can't find a line through just yet, but like you said, this isn't really a big overtaking area, despite the fact that the entries to these corners are so wide in terms of the real estate.
That's it, but there is one ideal line really through these corners, and you're really trying to put the pressure on and force the error out of the car in front of you to be able to make a move into those sorts of corners. But yeah, rest of the time it's those hard braking zones, so down into turn 10 that we've just been through. That's one spot that you can make a little bit of a dive down the inside if you're feeling brave and confident. But it's mainly this run out the last corner, and again we're looking at Eriksson. What can he do? Can he get the run out the corner? It's so tricky to get your line absolutely perfect through there. Very dusty off line with the dirt to the outside, and again he's not close enough. He's not making that move, and time is starting to run out. And the problem is he's getting more attention from behind as well, because Max Esterson and Pete Berryman are joining in this battle.
Yeah, they really are. Max Esterson gained almost the 0.2 of a second on that last lap, as Eriksson's kind of been stuck behind Liebert here. So yeah, things starting to close up for that final podium position, and things starting to close up for the race lead as well. I've just noticed that gap has been reduced from a second to half a second between Petit-Jean and Marciano. So Marciano, he's really putting in the hard yards to the end of this race. He's got to put that instant that he had with Gibson out of his mind now, and he just has to go chasing for the race win. Whatever happens with that other instant happens, but now this is on the table.
Yeah, he's got to really get the bit between his teeth, get your lines right there, Simone, and just, he'll basically have one opportunity, I think, towards the end of this race, onto the last lap potentially, because he only gained about a 1/10 of a second on the last lap there, so he needs to find a couple of tenths this lap and to give himself any sort of opportunity of going for the lead. A little bit wide there was Petit-Jean out of turn number 11, but nothing forthcoming as we look back once again to this battle for third place still raging on.
Through turn 13, Ari Landijk, and onto the pit straight they go. Big draft train But can Ericsson go for the move this time around, or is he going to wait one lap longer? He's just going to stay in line. He wants to have this place given to him, or at least an opportunity given to him on a silver platter. But he needs to set it up himself coming out of that final corner and nail that exit. But if Liber is doing the same thing through that corner, that's going to make it very tough to be able to sling one down the inside of turn 1.
Yeah, this is it. I think he needed to be just that little bit more decisive earlier on and maybe make a move into Tarzan, whereas now he just seems a little bit timid and doesn't want to get involved there too much, and it almost seems afraid of making that move into turn 1. He needs to show a bit more assertiveness, I feel, does Kim, but maybe Kim Ericsson feels a little bit more confident further on around the track at the different parts of the circuit. Maybe that's where he's stronger, and Tarzan isn't maybe his strong point.
Yeah, that's the thing. I did mention it a little bit earlier. You got to figure out where your opponents are strong, where they're weak, and base your sort of past decision based upon that. Where is your best opportunity going to arise? But for now, Petitjean is not giving Marciano any opportunities. He's not, and Liber is not giving Ericsson any opportunities, and neither is Max Max Esterson down to Peter Berryman. So this is just showing how difficult it is to overtake here sometimes. But with only a couple of laps left remaining, maybe the gloves are going to come off at some point.
Well, gloves coming off. It's certainly got the opportunity. Come on, this is your chance now, Kim. You're running out of time. 2.5 minutes remaining. And again, still just staying behind. And all the while, Max Esterson is getting closer and closer to that 4th place driver. And Max can sniff something here. He's got an opportunity to maybe make a move for 4th now. And if you're Kim Ericsson, you don't want to get embroiled in a battle too much with the guy behind, because you're just going to let 3rd place pull away.
Yeah. Sometimes that's the situation that you have to deal with. So we got a couple of things to look out for. This battle for P3 and back, which is up on your screen for you now. Race leaders also might be a thing by the time this race is done. So a couple of places to pay attention to here as these guys head their way through the right, and Skibbs and Liber actually trying to gap those cars behind at the moment, and he's doing all right job of it. But Ericsson, race leaders, you can see them there. Marciano go down the inside of Petitjean side by side for the race lead, then coming up towards the S's section, and Simone Maria Marciano has been able to get himself ahead here to the pointy end of the field within the last couple of laps. But can Petitjean fight back?
That was great. That was fantastic. He knew what he needed to do, and Petitjean just opened the door in towards turn number 9, and that just, as soon as you give Simone a sniff of an opportunity, we've seen him take it, and that's exactly what he's done, into the lead of this race. And with 56 seconds remaining, this is going to be the last lap here.
So yeah, officially this is the last lap as they come across the line. Petitjean, a big look to the inside, but I'm afraid, Thomas, that you're not going to be able to make a move from that far back into turn 1, no matter how optimistic you are. He just has to try and work at this and maybe, just maybe, be able to do anything through the middle sector. But for now, all of the cards are going the way of Simone Maria Marciano in this particular battle. It's still Liber, Ericsson, Esterson, Berryman, the order from P3 and back, so that didn't change on that previous lap, but it still has the potential to through this final one. Just 20 seconds left on the clock. Time will expire, then checkered flag will come out, and still everything to play for both P1 and P3 and back here at the moment. You can see Berryman on the back of this train. He's basically been on the back of this train the entire time, struggling to make forward progress, and well, it's just going to have to be half a lap to go for him to be able to do anything here. You can see the defensive lines coming through the middle sector through all 4 of those cars in that group, so no one able to get their way by, and into the S's section, well, into the braking zone for the S's section for the final time. Esterson's going to have at least a slight look, but again, no commitment down the inside there. Coming towards the final couple of corners of the lap now through turn number 12 and then through turn 13 to try and decide who finishes P3, who finishes in the race lead. But I think that latter one might be signed, sealed, and delivered at this point, because Simone Maria Marcheno, in a last-ditch pass, has been able to come away with the win in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge at Zandvoort. He's certainly happy with himself. Petitjean falls to second place. Samuel Lebert holds on to third.
That was a superb race. Great stuff to see. Close action. A couple of incidents involved in that. There's certainly not intentional from Simone on Thomas Gibson. I think that was just unfortunate with the front to rear contact. And of course there was a big incident on lap number 1, and one of those drivers who got caught up in that was Martin Piatella. Ends up in 21st place, so heartbreak for him. But yeah, what an opening round of this Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge.
Yeah, brilliant stuff indeed. We'll have your official race results come up on screen for you now. Simone Maria Marcheno in first place here today, with Thomas Petitjean, pole position sitter, falls to second. Samuel Lebert, he started in third place, he finishes in third place. Kim Eriksson up a couple of positions from 6th to 4th. Max Esserson up to 5th place here today. Pierre Berryman 6th, Pekka Toivonen in 7th, Petri in 8th, Sirica in 9th, and Sergio Agancio, he started 21st, he's up to P10 on the finishing results. So a fantastic drive from the 43. Thomas Gibson in P11, Antia Hola P12, and then the rest of them, you see Gard 13th, Mangan 14th, Ramstein in 15th, Lynch in 16th, Dakota Fripp in 17th place here today. Charlie Collins finishes in 18th, exactly where they started, as Sasha Gole in P19. Arthur LeHook in P20. Marty Piatella, you did describe his unfortunate issues there, Paul. He falls to P21. Mika Harppanen in P22. Joni Tarkkanen in P23. Charlie Summers in P24. Ronaldo Loreno in P25. Mikko Nurmi P26. Jesus Cecilia in P27. Josh Thompson 28th. Pazzoli 29th. And Bashalis Gergis ends up the 30th driver in the official order. But with that, what a race to start off the World Championship action here on this Saturday afternoon, at least if you're in Europe. Simone Maria Marcheno coming out on top here, Paul, and that's a good sign for his Altus Esports teammates.
They'll be looking to get off, get a bit of momentum from that, and they'll hopefully be able to take that forward into the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup coming up very shortly indeed.
Yep, very shortly is going to be the order of the day, but that is going to be it for the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge. The GT4 machines are done, and now we head to the 911 GT3 Cup cars, Will, and that is going to be an entirely different beast.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much to Connery Maddock and Paul Smith. Connery will be sticking around with me in the virtual studio as we are just a few moments away from that. Give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. So we have had ourselves a fantastic start to our weekend's worth of action. And I can blame Greg West for that, for calling me up in the middle. So hello, as we were talking there. So yeah, great GT4 race. We head over next to the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. That will be coming up in just 1 or 2 moments' time. But before we do that, let's have a look at some fantastic trailers made by Porsche to bring you up to speed with the 2020 championship.
I'm Josh Rogers, sim racer for VRS Coenda Sim Sport and reigning champion of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. I think for me, honestly, it doesn't make too much of a difference, at least for me, but I can definitely see how for some people it might be a little bit more of a challenge not getting that seat time, especially with some changes that happened to the car in the off season. I think for those guys that had to requalify, I think they probably got their head around the car a little bit more, the way how to drive it, the way how to set it up now, because things have changed. So I think for them, that's probably easier in terms of jumping into the championship. But I mean, for us too, we've had plenty of time to be able to test things and get our head around it too. I guess we don't have so much of the race practice because I guess in a race situation things are very different. But at least on that side of things, we're not too disadvantaged in terms of finding our way around the car and stuff like that. So I think, at least for me, it hasn't made much of a difference. Without a doubt, the field is definitely stronger this year. We've got probably another 5 or 10 guys that can compete for top 5 podiums or even wins. So I think, as a whole, that's fantastic. At the end of the day, it's going to be a little bit tougher this year with some of those guys, but at the same time, more enjoyable too. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to put on a better show for all the viewers as well. And I think amidst everything that's going on, that's fantastic. And it's always really fantastic to see new faces in the series and kind of those guys able to show themselves on the international stage if they haven't necessarily been able to in the past. Yeah, like you say, last year was certainly, I guess, without a doubt, my most successful year in sim racing. There was a lot of highs, a couple of lows, but thankfully mostly highs. And I think at the end of the day, at least for me, going undefeated in the VRS GT Racing World Championship Series alongside my teammates Ricardo and Martin, I think was fantastic. It's not something that in that series anyone else had done, and to be able to be on pole for 4 of the 6 races and win all 6 was certainly a highlight of my year. Well, yeah, making the move from obviously down under to Germany was a tough one, but at the same time there was opportunities on the table, and then I had to kind of grab them with both hands and go, I'm still young, so I've got at least that advantage on my side. We'll see where things go after this, but I think at least for the next year, I'm certainly looking forward to staying here, and it should be good. To be honest, it can be a little bit interesting sometimes living with your teammates and also your competition. But at the same time, at least for me, it's been kind of friends on track, friends off track. It's not really been a massive issue, but at the same time, though, most of the races that we've done so far this year have been team events, and we've been racing together. So things could change come May with the individual championship on the line, and but yeah, we'll see. I think at the end of the day, all the guys in the team are all mature about that, and I think as relationships off track are just as important as they are on track, because they do end up leading to impacting performance. So we need to be able to work together on track and off track, and I think being in the house with the guys, I think should only strengthen that bond. It certainly depends on kind of what's ahead of that race weekend. There might be a race the weekend before, so you kind of limits your preparation time. At least for us, before round 1, certainly tried to put in roughly 2 weeks to try and make sure that we've engineered the car as good as we can, and also get the most out of ourselves as drivers. During the season, though, that can be a little bit more tricky sometimes when you've got back-to-back races, so you kind of have to cram 2 weeks worth of work into one, which can be a challenge at times. But yeah, I think optimally, you'd probably be looking for 2 weeks. At least that's what we're doing. Yeah, the race day preparation definitely has changed for me a little bit this year, not having to be up in the middle of the night, but at the same time I can't sleep in anymore, so there are downsides, but I think for sure, usually same as a practice day, you'll get up, you'll try to have as good of a breakfast as you can to try and kind of get yourself ready for the day ahead. Usually do a few hours of laps or a couple hours of laps, usually qualifying preparation, trying to make sure that you can pump out the same lap after lap. As in this series, everything's so close, the gap between P1 and P20 could be a matter of 0.2. So making the slightest mistake can be the difference between having a good weekend and a not so good one. Honestly, my advice for people looking to get into sim racing would be just to try it out, have fun. Commit to it though. You don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars in the beginning to get into it. You can have a relatively cheap PC, a desk, and a Logitech wheel, and kind of still be able to go out there and have fun. As long as you're enjoying yourself, surround yourself with mates, and just give it a try and just commit to it. I think as long as you're doing a little bit every day and enjoying yourself, then that's all you can really do.
Hi, my name is Maximilian Benecke. I'm a driver for Team Redline in the Porsche Esports Supercup series for 2020. I think it's even a disadvantage for us drivers who were already qualified, because we didn't have to qualify and drive in the series with them together. So while they had like 2 or 3 months to practice already, we were focusing on other races, focusing on different tasks. I'm running my own company, so I put a lot of time into that instead of really driving the car. And we also have a new tire model on the car, so it's again a bit different. But I think in the end, there won't be a big difference. The first hours have been hard with the practice, but overall, I think it's going to be fine. Well, I would lie if I would say no. I definitely want to win this year. There's nothing else I want more. Finishing second is cool, but finishing first is what you want to have in the end. So I will try my best, and obviously having a great team around me, which can help with setting up the car, practicing and stuff like that. So it's going to be different and hopefully better. I would definitely say that the competition this year is higher than last year. Last year we had this special situation where a lot of drivers who were driving in the Grand Prix series before in iRacing were then automatically qualified. So they were driving a completely different car and probably lacked a bit of pace. Now all of the 40 drivers are on the same level. They are all driving the same car. They're all qualified in a Porsche, and this will make the competition much higher. And I expect a lot of new people to be on the top position in the races. Well, moving to Team Redline was more of a merger between the old Pure Racing team and Team Redline. They basically have all the management and social media activities around them already, while we just had the talented drivers. So we thought it would be the best if we come together in a certain point and just combine those forces. And I think everyone in the team is very happy about it. And it can only help for this season. Yeah, well, last year we had 2 drivers in the series, Alex and me from the old Pure Racing team. And the winner of the championship in the end had a team of 10 drivers around them who helped him off track, but also on track. And now this season it will be different. We have 9 drivers from Team Redline competing in the Porsche Esports Supercup. So I hope they do the same for me, and I'm pretty sure they will. So it's going to be completely different, and it will definitely be better this year. Yeah, well, the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup surely is the highest competitive series we've ever seen on sim racing. 40 of the best drivers around the world drive against each other on a 10-week schedule, and it's going to be harder than ever to be on top of the timing sheets, because in the end the field is just divided by maybe 3, 4, or 5 tenths. Yeah, from the outside, it always looks like the cars are the same, the setup must be the same, so it's only the driver. But in the end, there's a lot of preparation going on before those races, 1 or 2 weeks at least, where we just try to find this last couple of tenths in the setup. And you can go from fighting for P1 in one race to fighting for only P10 in the next race, because the car setup just doesn't match for the race circuit we're driving on. So it's going to be hard, but we will try our best to just make the best setup for every track. Most of the preparation is actually happening 1 or 2 weeks before the race, but at the actual race day, I normally go to bed quite late, 1 or 2 a.m., and then I wake up at around 10, which means that the race starts in like 4.5 hours. And then I start practicing with race fuel, just to get used to the car again. And about 1 to 2 hours before the race, I switch to the quali setup. I try it with low fuel because qualifying is so essential in this series. You have to nail this 1 or 2 laps you have. And then, I just go into my tunnel, I shut off everything, I don't talk to anyone anymore, and then it goes straight into the race, and I just try my best. Well, if you're interested in motorsport and you want to start with sim racing, just make sure that you buy equipment which is not too expensive at the beginning, and then just try to have a feeling for it and just practice and practice and practice, and you will see you will get better. It has happened to all of us. Nobody of us started at the highest level. I joined sim racing 4.5 years ago, and I was not really good. I was more than a second off the top guys. And then after months and months of practice, I finally came to this level. So it's all about being very patient and just practicing and having fun on the track, and you will see pace comes, and just make the best you can, and enjoy.
There. Thank you very much then to Max Benecke and to Joshua Rogers for those fantastic interviews. And well, it really shows two very insightful pieces of information from Joshua Rogers, who won the championship, of course, last year, and for Max Benecke, who was mighty close. And who can forget the exciting, enthralling end we had to the 2020 campaign. And in fact, there's some big changes for both of those drivers. For Joshua Rogers, Connery, he's moved from sunny Australia over to Germany as a part of the VRS Commander Simsports house, which is located just about 20 miles or so away from Cologne in Germany.
Yeah, of course, that was related to one of the questions raised in that interview. Well, of course, making the big move, which is, perhaps one of the furthest house moves that you can do from Australia to Germany. It's going to be interesting to see how he settles in. Of course, he's been there for a couple of months now, I think, so I don't think he's coming into this one too jet-lagged or not used to how things work there. I think he's going to be relatively okay. And you can see maybe how this changes his preparation, because like he said in the video, he had to be up some ridiculous hours to take part in this race last season, but now he's at normal human waking hours, so maybe that'll factor into things a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, hopefully, having a great time over in Germany. Of course, the last couple of months, I can imagine, would have been difficult with social distancing and so on. But I'm sure the guys over at Commander Simsports are doing their very best to make that team house work. Meanwhile, with Benecke, second on that championship last year, and Connery, I talked quite heavily at the back end of last year about how he almost became a poster boy for Porsche. We saw him in that great video that was used at Sim Racing Expo and then at the Frankfurt Auto Show 2019. And of course, when we think about him and the championship in 2020, first of all, Pure Racing Team is no more. They did a merger in the off-season with Team Redline. And then the second part of that is actually we're not going to be calling Max Benecke in a Team Redline car. He'll be in the Porsche 24 machine.
Yeah, so Redline have a good couple of entrants into this series, but when we talk about Max Benecke in particular, I sort of think of him as having this reputation of always the bridesmaid but never the bride, despite, his incalculable amount of skill and his attitude to things. It always seems that it's just not quite enough to try and get one over the likes of Joshua Rogers. So I think coming into this season, he'll be back, and he'll be back with a vengeance. That's for sure, because I think he's fed up of finishing in second place in some of these big events.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick 1 minute breather here. So you will notice your stream will just cut out for maybe 20, 30 seconds. We are going to get back with you as quickly as possible. We do apologize for some of the technical issues that you saw a little bit earlier on when you were watching coverage of the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge event. But we're going to take a quick breather for just a moment, and we'll be back with continued coverage after this. Welcome back then to the Tag Heuer countdown to green here from Circuit Park, Zandvoort. 14 minutes and 20 odd seconds before we are going to be racing in the first round of the Tag Heuer. So the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. And with that, let Porsche introduce you to the series. Twelve minutes then until we are ready to race in the first of our season's event in the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. My name is Will Vincent, and along with me for the ride in the virtual studio, yes, with some social distancing of about 70 miles, is Connery Maddock. Connery, hello.
You in Birmingham, I'm in Derby, so we're keeping an appropriate distance away from each other, but I don't think these guys out here on track will be putting any distance between themselves. I think it's going to be a bit of bumper-to-bumper action, shall we say, and sometimes that can be...
And first point I want to make here, that question that was in that video, well, can Joshua Rogers retain his championship for 2020? The thing about, you've got to argue that Joshua Rogers is just as strong as he was in 2019. However, Connery, the competition this year is absolutely humongous.
Yep, it is, and very thing. He thinks that the field is going to be so much more competitive this season. We only have 3 drivers that were in the bottom 20 last season actually able to re-qualify up into the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. So, you know, a lot of those drivers that got sort of demoted from the series at the end of last season were those drivers that on the previous iteration of the iRacing World Championship got their ticket for free into the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. But now those are out of the equation. All the drivers that qualified into this series did so in this very same Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. Everything is just so much closer. It's going to be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, indeed. So 40 drivers once again will be making up that field. We have got qualifying about ready to go. We're going to hand it over to our commentators in just a couple of moments time before we are ready to go racing here on iRacing. Thank you, of course, to Tag Heuer being the presenting sponsor of this series as well. So qualifying is almost ready to go, as I say. And the qualifying rules remain the same, Connery. The top 8 from qualifying, they'll be inverted for race number 1. Where you finish in race number 1 is where you start for race number 2.
Yeah, kind of an interesting situation there with the qualifying results being inverted, but, you know, variety is the spice of life coming into this one, and it requires consistency across both races for you to do well in these sorts of events. Because, like you said, your finishing position from race 1 will be your starting position from race 2. So if you've had an absolutely diabolical race number 1, then things are not going to get that much better for you in race 2 if you have to start so deep in the field.
And with that, as I say, we're counting down, and of course we've got 10 race meetings as well, just as what we had in 2019, some new tracks and that. And the big one for me, Connery, which are Grand Prix related at the start, have had some form of Grand Prix racing over the years. But then after that, we go to 2 tracks, which are going to be incredible. We've got Circuit de la Sarthe, around the time that the 24 Hours of Le Mans should have been taking place. And then we go to the Nordschleife.
Yeah. 2 very interesting, very tricky tracks, and tracks that these cars don't usually race on. So it'd be interesting to see how the dynamic changes at those sorts of racetracks, because we're not using the alternate layout of the Circuit de la Sarthe, you know, the shorter layout. We're actually using the full layout for the 24 Hours of Le Mans track. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting situation. The Nordschleife will also be a really interesting dynamic as well. Considering we just had the iRacing Nürburgring 24-hour event just happened just a weekend or so ago. So those drivers would be very used to how that track goes, but maybe not in these Porsche 911 GT3 cars if they weren't in that class for that race.
And with that, we would like to say welcome to the newest member of the iRacing commentary team, Martin Haven, and he'll be Smith on commentary after this.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing for 2020. We're at Circuit Park Zandvoort on the North Sea coast, ready for the first of 10 double race weekends to decide this prestigious title and the fate of the $200,000 prize fund. We start this weekend in Zandvoort, moving to Spain and the Circuit de Catalunya for next week's race weekend, and then to the Midlands in Great Britain, to Donington. Are there any greater challenges? A great switchback US track, Road Atlanta, with a terrifying plunge of turn 13. Spa-Francorchamps to round out the month. And by that stage, we will know our championship challengers. My name's Martin Haven, and also joining us on the commentary is Paul Smith. Paul, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
You might see some overtaking here on this classic Zandvoort circuit, and there are a few places to pass, Paul, but you've got to be pretty brave.
We've seen opportunities into the turn 10 and 11 Hans Ernst part of the track as well. So I would say the most important one is the run out of our line.
In its reconfigured form, it was due to be the first time since the 1980s, the home of the Dutch Formula One Grand Prix this season. That new drivers, one of 17 new drivers in the field of 40. Paul, can you guess which one?
I am going to say it's Jeff. What an opportunity to see him compete against the best sim racers in the world. And he had to qualify for this championship as well. Let's not say that it was great to have somebody of his talent involved in a championship like this.
And it just shows how good he is, because for somebody to come in, it's like a pro sim racer going out on a real racetrack with professional touring car drivers or something. Is a huge testament to his abilities. And of course, he races anything, everything, all day, every day.
So yeah, definitely these guys are going to have the opportunity to be able to get mark for this championship. In my opinion, he is the one, because he's champion, he's going to be going for it and wanting to be
in fifth place ahead of Jeff Giassi. That's another long stream of cars. So out of the tight Vodafone corner and then sweeping down into the final part of this opening lap here at Zandvoort. The right-hander at Kumo, and then trying to build up speed early on the throttle out of the Ari Luijendijk corner. Named after the double Indy 500 winner. The straight seems long when you're on the track walk, very short when you're in the slipstream trying to pass somebody. Sebastian Joe pulls out from fourth place, doesn't get a chance to take a look. And Paul, in our Porsche Cayman GT4 support race, which was a free open qualifier race, it was a last lap pass, not quite last lap, it was penultimate lap pass that decided the race win. Patience is going to be really important on this Zandvoort circuit.
Absolutely, and with there only being 15 minutes in this first race as well, you want to try and get moves to be decisive but clean as well. Of course, there are race stewards who look at the events afterwards. There are penalty points that go onto their licenses for this series, so you've got to be careful with how things go out there. I can tell you Patrick Holtzman has headed onto pit road because of a penalty for a jump start, and in fact he's not got back up and running. But Max Benecke, one of the big talking points, one of the championship contenders, is out of this race. He had an incident down at turn number 9 on lap 1.
So Max Benecke, last year's championship runner-up, we heard from him in our countdown to green, and that's a really tough way to start the season. Of course, the advantage here is there are 2 races. The disadvantage is you start race 2 where you finish race 1. So that doesn't always really help. If you've been forced to the back, you've had an accident or an incident, you will start the second race right at the tail. And of course, qualifying, it was not the fastest driver who started on pole position. The top 8 in qualifying were reversed, so the 8th fastest driver started first, and 8th on the grid was the fastest man. Now, there is one question that everybody wants answered, and that is, where was Max Verstappen? He is currently running car number 69 in 33rd position. So Max with a lot of work to do. There he is. Very distinctive livery. Of course, the orange of the Netherlands, their racing colours on that car. So he's one of the easier ones to spot. He is chasing down car number 12 right now. In fact, that's Marcus Jensen. So Marcus has dropped back a little bit, because at the end of the previous lap, he was in 21st. Max was shown as 33rd place. So lots of battle going on down in the midfield, and the lead group is starting to get shuffled back up. Sebastian Job had clear air behind him at the beginning of the last lap. That has now vanished. This little queue of 4 has towed up the car of Joshua Rogers, 92. Behind him with the white nose, Jeff Giassi, and then Dane Warren, the 57th. He's in 7th ahead of Alejandro Sanchez. Then there's a little group, a little gap back to the 33 car of Ricardo Castro-Ledo, but our race leader is still Graham Carroll, man from Edinburgh in Scotland, racing for the Red Bull Racing Esport team. And he has got an increasing lead, actually. And the news for him is good, but Tommy Usgaard, the Norwegian behind in second place, is coming under increasing pressure from car number 43, Brian Lockwood from the USA, the Racecraft Esports driver. There he is with the black and white predominantly on his car. Makes him easy to pick out as well. And he is piling on the pressure for second place. But Paul, the problem for Lockwood is, if he makes a move and doesn't get it, then he's just going to be shouldered aside by everybody behind him. So you really have to be pretty confident before you go having a lunge.
Yeah, and it's as you alluded to earlier, that you've got to be patient with your moves, but you've got to make them count. That's the important thing here, because get off of line, not quite make the move, you're going to leave the door wide open for Sebastian Job, who actually is my pick for the championship this season. I thought he had an incredible second half to the season last season. I think he could really have a good go at winning this championship. He seems to be comfortable in the car, but interested to see, at the top 8, 3 of those drivers are new to the series this season. They came through qualifying, as we said, 17 new drivers to this championship, and 3 of them up there in the top 8.
Interesting that we heard from our championship top 2 from last year, because they were pre-qualified. The top 20 drivers didn't have to go through the qualifying races, so they may not be quite as up to speed in race terms with the cars as those who have qualified, like Sebastian Job, who has a look on the inside and is very careful to avoid contact. Somewhere just between himself there and 43 Brian Lockwood, they managed to give each other enough racing room in Tarzan. But the drivers who didn't have to pre-qualify, they were saying with the new tyre and with the changes to the car, they were feeling maybe they might be a little bit on the back foot. The other thing you have to remember when you're having a lunge, it's not Monza. This is not the championship decider. You have got to get points on the board. 8th is better than 10th, and 10th is better than the gravel trap. So if you start the season with a 0, that follows you round all year long. Get points. Points make prizes. And Job again, looking to the inside. He's really having a go here, isn't he?
He's giving it a really good go, trying to hold it around the outside of 9. You can do that. A little bit of a touch there. Josh Rogers getting into the side of Job as well, and before you know it, Job is looking behind because Rogers is past, and here comes Jeff Giassi now, along with Dane Warren. So all of a sudden, he's gone from being in 4th place, looking to challenge for a podium, he's dropped back and is battling with 6th and 7th.
Yeah, number 7 there, Jeff Giassi, having a look but had to watch the back door because Dane Warren, 57, was all over the Brazilian flags painted on the rear quarter panels of that Porsche Esports Brazil car. So Jeff Gyasi just having to mind his P's and Q's, but that Sebastian Job attempt there, going down into corner 9, it's a long left-hander, and it does leave you hung up on the outside. And in the end, he just couldn't find enough traction there. So Josh Rogers, last year's champion, the Australian who's now living in Germany, he is the man who has made the move here. So he's gone up from 5th to 4th position. Is he going to start his championship defence with a podium? Looks like he's got the bit between his teeth. Sebastian Job, the young Scot, will have to try again. Somebody kicking up the dirt there as they run a little wide, starting the climb up towards the Hunsrück. Then plunging downhill out of Slotemacher now, after Rob Slotemacher, and then down into turn 7. These sweeping downhill corners really try and throw you off camber, really try and throw you offline. You've got to be absolutely precise as you come over the brow from Skyfluck, because otherwise you'll still be paying for it here in turn 9. Well, there's the race leader, Graham Carroll, number 21. Tommy Osgaard, not quite close enough to do anything about him, still half a second back. There, 43, Brian Lockwood in 3rd place. He's doing a pretty impressive job hanging on there. Lockwood from Tallahassee in Florida. So, yeah, early morning, early-ish morning start for him at least. Not too bad starting here in the early afternoon Central European summertime.
I'll tell you what, I have been impressed by Brian Lockwood. I've seen him in multiple events on broadcasts that we have done, and he's seemed to have just come through and progressed in this last year. Seems to have really stepped up a gear and done well to qualify for this championship, and showing he deserves to be up there challenging for a podium position. But this battle for 4th and 5th place, if they're not careful, those guys at the front are just going to pull away.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of racecraft there. Sebastian Job, if he thinks he's quicker than Joshua Rogers, don't forget he was ahead of Joshua Rogers on the grid, so he's not qualified quicker because the top 8 were reversed. But if he thinks he can race quicker, he's going to have to race smart as well, and he needs to work with Rogers, not make Rogers defend, allow Rogers to use the racing line so the two of them will go quicker, because you're right, the top 3 are starting to pull away. The gap between Brian Lockwood and Joshua Rogers now over half a second. Lockwood 8/10 away from the lead, so they're not going to get Graham Carroll. They're unlikely to get Tommy Osgaard, but what they could do is gang up and try and take 3rd from Brian Lockwood. Lockwood is on his own. He's not going to be trying to attack anybody, so definitely Joshua Rogers there in the red, white and black number 92. He is the man who's got to make the moves. He's got to tow them up to Brian Lockwood if he wants to finish on a podium. He's going to have to ignore the fact that Sebastian Job is there, that Jeff Gyasi is there, that Dane Warren is there as well. But the good news for him is that's the end of the queue, because then there's a little gap back to 8th where Alejandro Sanchez is. He's about a second away from the back of this little queue.
Yeah, this front queue now, as you mentioned, just moving that away a little bit, just spreading out the field now. You've got little battle packs throughout the field, so you've got this front 7 all in a line, and then you've got that gap to the block of 3 of Sanchez, Fluke and Castrolado, and then you've got a big gaggle of cars behind Martin Kroenke as well. So you're seeing how this track just spreads everyone out over the progression of the race, but they still stay in those battle packs in that slipstream battle. But really, there's not too many moves going to be happening at the moment. It's mainly, I would feel, trying to force the mistake from the other driver, but at the moment these are the 40 best drivers in the world in sim racing, so it's going to be very difficult to force and pressure a mistake on those drivers.
Well, look at the ticker across the top. 33rd place at the moment is Jonas Wallmeyer. The last time we checked in on car number 69, Max Verstappen, that's where he was. And if you look at the ticker, he's not further down the order. Where is Mighty Max? The answer is he's already, well, at the start of this lap, he was up to 21st place. So I'm not sure who's made overtakes, but I'm absolutely certain that Max has made more than anybody else. Homing in on the top 20 at the moment, that's the 77 car, Valtteri Alander, the Finn for Vendaval Sim Racing, right in front of him. And, you know, he will know who's coming up behind him, and he will know that he wasn't there a couple of laps ago.
Here comes
so that
Job.
always sows the seeds. Here comes Job down the inside, Job into Tarzan. Again, you can see 92 picking up the throttle really early at Joshua Rogers, just starting to drive the car off the corner. 911s really respond to that with a lot of weight still over those rear-driven wheels. They work in a different way. I know I'm going to shot down for saying this. They work in a different way to racing cars. A 911 is a very different thing. Okay, these are very different from 1960s or 70s 911s, but nevertheless, you have to drive it with the back end. I think that's where Max Verstappen is really enjoying these cars, probably because it's like a low downforce F1 car. It's got plenty of power. It's got lots of mechanical grip. And Job again down the inside, and that could work, except the road now goes left. And that means that he is on the outside of Joshua Rogers in the 92 car. It's exactly where he tried before. This is where Rogers got by him when he was trying to take third from Brian Lockwood. But Job has got more pace than Rogers here. Now he's going to have to go down the inside into the S's, and that is what he was setting up. And Rogers on the dirt right behind them. Jeff Giassi in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Brazil #7 car. And again on the inside, he's not waiting, is he? 30 seconds on the clock. This is Sebastian Job going for 4th place, trying to take it back from the champion Joshua Rogers, and it's a drag race across the line to start the final lap. Rogers just gets his nose in front. They're going 3 wide down to Tarzan. Giassi goes, oh no, we're not. Now you can make the outside line work. Final lap, Sebastian Job trying to get it hooked up there, trying to keep the pressure on Joshua Rogers. Rogers in 92, still with his nose in front for 4th place. And did you notice how close Brian Lockwood has got to Tommy Østgaard? They are barely half a car length apart, so the battle for 2nd is livening up as well as the battle for 4th.
This is sensational stuff, and this is why I love commentating on the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. It's brilliant, close action between the best drivers in the world, and as you mentioned, that battle for 2nd place is really heating up as well. So we've got 2 great battles at the front of the field here as we're heading into the second half of the final lap of this sprint race.
Yeah, final lap confirmed as we head into the long left-hander at turn 9. So you come up over the brow and then start to sweep down again towards the S's. And is this where Brian Lockwood makes a last lap lunge for 3rd place? He's not close enough. The door has been firmly closed by Tommy Østgaard. He just had enough there, and so he keeps his nose in front. Out front still, as he has been since turn 1, Graham Carroll. So this is going to be a race that he won right from the very beginning. Graham Carroll is going to take the checkered flag to win the first race of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing for 2020. The Scot is the victor. 2nd place goes to Tommy Østgaard. Brian Lockwood in 3rd, and Josh Rogers held on to 4th ahead of Sebastian Job and Jeff Giassi. Looking back now, the question is, where does Max Verstappen get to? Looking for the 69 car to come across the line, and he was in 21st place.
He's finished in 21st, I can tell you.
He has finished in 21st place. That is a fantastic start to his Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup career for Max Verstappen. Breathless stuff. And Graham Carroll, the Scot, is the man who claims victory from Edinburgh to the top step of the podium. Tommy Østgaard from Norway in 2nd place, and Brian Lockwood rounding out the top 3. He had a lot of work to do for most of that race. Brian Lockwood did not flake under pressure from the champion Joshua Rogers or Sebastian Job. Jeff Giassi rounding out the top half dozen. And don't forget, of course, this is where they start race 2. So Dane Warren 7th, Alejandro Sanchez 8th, Jamie Fluke 9th, and Ricardo Castro-Lado will round out the top 10. From 11th on down, Martin Kroenke and Mac Backham. The 2 teammates were so close together, weren't they? And then Alexei Usyakala, he lost ground right at the start. Sindri Setsas, Christoph Dambitz, And then Thibaut Gazobon, the 18-year-old, the youngest man in the field. He finishes inside the top 20, which is rounded out by Valtteri Alander. The Finn is going to have pressure on his shoulders right from the word go, because he has got Max Verstappen behind him. He finished in 21st place. Marcus Jensen, David Williams, Gianni Vecchio, they'll be looking for Max to lever the gaps in front of them to see how they can follow through. And then as we get on to the final page of our results for this first race of the season, we will see some disappointment there as well. Because certainly our pole sitter would have been hoping Patrick Holtzman for a lot more than that. And Max Benecke in 37th place. Double two for Marin Cholak, who disappeared early in the race, and he and Thomas Teitler finishing 9 laps down with Marc Perez. So there we go. That is a breathless first race here in Zandvoort for the Porsche Tag Heuer Supercup by iRacing 2020. And there is definitely the chance of a double race win for the young man from Edinburgh in Scotland, Graham Carroll, who was victorious in race 1.
Well, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Paul. What an opening round of the championship it has been. Will Vincent, along with Connery Maddock, for this short little interlude before we get ready for race number 2. Storylines, Connery. Number 1, Graham Carroll is going to be a very happy Scotsman right now.
Yeah, it was just one of the best races that I've seen from him, and it wasn't flashy at all. It was just holding station at the very front of the field. He had pressure applied to the back of him, but he just completely and utterly dealt with it. A very confident drive from Graham Carroll in this one. But another thing I want to talk about as well, that's Josh Rogers and Sebastian Job battle. Oh my word, that was incredible, and I get the feeling that's not the last we'll see of them two coming together on track.
Yeah, Josh Rogers, of course, at the top of his game. Sebastian Job has been developing so much in this series. From probably the second half of last season, he was one of the big standout drivers. On the opposite side of the standings, however, you've got to talk about the disappointing start to the championship for Max Benecke. And it shows and it highlights something really, really important. You must qualify well.
Yeah, I think the story is that he had an incident with Kevin Ellis Jr., I believe, on that opening lap, and unfortunately it was, for Max Benecke, the car not really in a state to continue on in those, high points-paying positions. And the thing is here, well, race 1, poor finish, doesn't set you up well for race 2, does it?
We could see a charge for the field, and I know Benecke can charge for a field when he gets his head down. That will be fantastic. Verstappen, P21 in that first race. He's got a lot of work to do in race number 2, but I'd call that a solid debut there. You finish the race, that's the first objective in your first race in a new championship for all of these drivers, but especially for Max.
Yeah, it was a good job for Verstappen to pick his way through the field like that, despite the instance that did happen further back through the field. He seemed to have come through on them relatively unscathed, so that's a positive sign there for Verstappen. And like you said, I'm very interested to see how far he can climb, how far up the standings he can climb in this actual feature race. And well, he'll have a little bit more time to do so, considering we have 30 minutes for this feature race instead of the 15 for Heat 1. So many more positions on offer for Verstappen, I'm telling you that.
Yeah, 30 minutes for race number 2, but don't forget there's also prize money available. So whoever wins race number 2 will walk out of Circuit Park Zandvoort $1,000 richer. Second place will get $400. Third place, $200. So yes, the championship gaining points is so important. But some early prize money in the season, that could well set you off for a roll. Because actually, Connery, we do often see drivers who do well at the start of the season. They establish that momentum. It gets them on that roll. And I'm sure Graham Carroll would love $1,000 in his bank account.
Another clean start here, and he might just be, already has one hand on the money, considering how difficult it is to overtake here, and the defensive efforts that we know Graham Carroll can put up. I remember in a series I broadcasted a long time ago, it was always him putting up the massive defensive efforts to be able to secure positions. So look out for that in this next race. Also look out for Brian Lockwood as well, because that was a very surprising finish in heat race number 1. I didn't, coming into this series, I didn't expect that he would be a driver mixing it in at the front, but he's done so here at Zandvoort, at least for Heat 1. So if he can carry on that form into the feature race, then he might be on for some prize money as well.
And of course, that $1,000 for first place, $400 for second, $200 for third is a part of a $200,000 prize pool on offer. The winner of the series, well, that'll just be $50,000 to the good after 10 weekends worth of racing. So, 3 minutes to go before we get ourselves ready for race number 2. Come on, Connery, give me a winner. Give me a top 3, actually.
I think Graham Carroll's going to win this feature race as well, so he'll do the double in the first round of the season. Josh Rogers, I think he'll be a little bit more aggressive in this race. You saw him try to get aggressive with Sebastian Job, but he was able to only just file himself through. But given a little bit more time in this race to try and construct these passes, I think Rogers will have a little bit of a better time. So he'll be inside the top 3 as well. And of course, it's going to be a toss-up between, I think, Lockwood and Job for that next podium position.
It could be a case of 2 Red Bull Racing esports drivers on the podium. It could be a case of 2 drivers from the wider VOS Koana SimSport stable on the podium. But who knows? Anything can happen in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, and anything can happen at this racetrack. And with that, let's hand it back over to our commentators, Martin Haven and Paul Smith.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Connery. Yes, just getting our breath back here and looking at the mouth-watering prospects for race 2 here of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing for 2020. The second race at Circuit Park Zandvoort, one of the classic old-school Formula 1 tracks. They first raced at Zandvoort actually on the streets of the town on this North Sea coast. In 1939, they had planned the next year to build a racetrack. That obviously had to wait until later in the 40s. And from the early 1960s, it has been the home of the Dutch Grand Prix. So, okay, buckle up. There's the Netherlands, the North Sea between the Netherlands and the east coast of Great Britain. And when I say on the coast, I mean on the coast. It is a few hundred meters from the beach. Look at the sand dunes all around. New Holiday Park on the right-hand side there. That's where the old Formula 1 track used to go, around to the right. But the current, or up to 2020 version of Circuit Park Zandvoort is there as they raced it in the in this century. So we have our 40 cars getting ready to start again, and all eyes will be pretty much on the car that's on position 1 on the grid, and the next few, and on the car that's on position 21 on the grid, because that is where we find Dutch superstar Max Verstappen. Not a pro sim racer like everybody else in the field, but a genuine, actual Formula 1 driver who has had laps on the new circuit here at Zandvoort, as well as the old one. So Graham Carroll, the winner of our first encounter, gets a real chance to double up. It's a longer race, twice the duration of the first one. So 30 minutes. That main feature race format allows everybody else to try and work out where the weak points in his armour may be. He managed to jump away early in race 1, and that's where he stayed. Following him onto the podium, Tori Usgaard, and he will start alongside Brian Lockwood, 3rd place in race 1, ahead of Joshua Rogers. The reigning champion, though, starts 4th. Sebastian Job in 5th place, very racy in race 1, lost a spot to Rogers with a an attempt on Lockwood midway through the race. And Jeff Chiassi, the Brazilian, he will start on row 3 on the outside, 6th position. Behind them is Dane Warren ahead of Alejandro Sanchez. Then we saw a little battle behind Jamie Fluke and Ricardo Castro-Ledo all the way through race 1 between Martin Krinker and Mac Backham, his teammate. Will that happen again? We are ready to race at Circuit Park Zandvoort, and away we go. The second round of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing 2020 is on. The poleman leads them into the first corner. Can he avoid getting tagged into Tarzan? He does. 69 in the middle of the pack, Max Verstappen. And Carroll almost runs out wide into the sand there. Graham Carroll, the race leader, though, controlling the start well. Tommy Osgaard with the white sides to his car and the purple bonnet. He is in second, and Joshua Rogers has already made the jump ahead of Brian Lockwood, who's down to 4th. The champion 92 with the red VRS bonnet. He is already up to 3rd. Sebastian Job in 5th position. And look at the white bonnet and the Brazilian rear quarters of car number 7, Jeff Chiassi. He is in 6th. Perfect start for Graham Carroll, Paul Smith. He just had to get out of turn 1 safely to stand any chance.
Yeah, had to avoid any incidents, and that's exactly what he did there at the start. And as you mentioned, Joshua Rogers putting the pressure on, and I think Tommy Erskard was desperate to get in the lead to try and just run away from the hard-charging Josh Rogers. But Sebastian Job he'll be wanting to get past sooner rather than later on this race, because with it being a longer race, it gives you more opportunities to gain positions. There was an incident at the back of the field between Johan Haaf and one of his teammates, one of his compatriots, Jared Filsell, as well. So further down the field there was incidents at turn number 1, and Mitchell de Jong has just had an incident as well. He's dropping down the order. He's down to 18th, with Antoine Hijla dropping down as well. So incidents are plenty on lap 1. Carroll though locking his brakes. That's the opportunity.
Yes, gave that away. Usgaard through into the lead, and that will give Joshua Rogers in 92 all the encouragement he needs. Okay, 1 lap in, and the lead has changed already. Everybody needs to settle down now. I know the pulses will have been racing. I know their mouths will have been dry and their palms clammy before the start of this, but that's exactly what he did not need to do. Poleman from the first race, Patrick Holtzman, was out on the first turn, and he is in trouble again. He is going to have a double zero weekend. That's an absolute horror. He was 8th fastest in qualifying, top 8 reversed. He had the pole position, couldn't make good use of it. And this time, in the second of our races, Graham Carroll giving away the lead. Max Verstappen, though, working his way very quickly up the order. Look at the ticker on the left. He is in 14th, started 21st, so he's passed 7 cars on the opening lap. I would love to see his onboard stream in Tarzan and through Hugenholz and Hunsrück, because I bet it was just mayhem. There he is, car number 69. Now he's got to make the jump from where he is now up to Thibaut Casabon, who is racing for Romain Grosjean's team. The 18-year-old is the next car in the train, but he's a second ahead at the moment of Mighty Max. Leaders come streaming down the main straight, so 13 cars in the queue. Sebastian Job again looks deep, and again Rogers looks deep as well. That was more in defence than in attack, but it didn't hurt him. He closed right up on 21, Graham Carroll. So you've got the 2 Red Bull cars. Graham Carroll, race 1 winner. Between them is the defending champion. And already the champion has started with a good points score, and that is the key at the beginning of the season.
It was interesting to see that Graham Carroll missed his apex once again through Tarzan. Now I know it's cambered and it works in your favour, does that corner, so it doesn't matter too much if you're not right up against the curb on the inside, but when you've got somebody that close behind in Joshua Rogers, it can give him the sniff of an opportunity to stick his nose in there. So Graham's got to be a little bit more careful coming into Tarzan this next lap, but it is giving Sebastian Job the opportunity of getting right up on the tail of Rogers, and Graham Carroll in that, the Scotsman from the Red Bull Esports, Red Bull Racing Esports, should I say. He'll be hoping that his teammate can start slowing down Josh Rogers from behind. Job as well, fastest lap on that last lap, but that time will come down.
Now, the other advantage for Carroll is that we saw from race 1 that 22, Sebastian Job, his Red Bull Esports teammate, will be in any gap like a rat up a drain pipe, whether it's inside or outside. So he is definitely one of the most aggressive racers in the top 10, and they are slowly dropping Brian Lockwood, 43, in 5th place. So it's now a three-way battle for second, and up the inside, Job, just on the left-hand side of your screen, dive down the inside. So now he's got his braking right, and he has overtaken Rogers. He's gone back up into 3rd place. Now, he is not going to play rear gunner for Graham Carroll. That much I can absolutely guarantee you. Sebastian Job, English, Graham Carroll, Scottish, teammates they might be, but they are going to fight each other for this championship. And the basic rule of motor racing is, if you can't beat your teammate, you're never going to be champion. So you've got to beat your teammate first. They are the most dangerous of your rivals.
Well, they are the yardstick for you on that track, because they're the only other people that can have access to your data. You can see their data, you can see where they're faster, where they're slower, what they're doing with the setup as well. So they are your yardstick out there. But remember, this is not a team championship, is this? This is very much an individual championship. So yes, they may be in these stables, in these teams, these big, huge teams that are racing in this championship, but it is all about the individual at the end of the day. This is an individual championship, and that's where the big bucks are.
And we heard from Josh Rogers about leaving Australia, moving to Germany to live with his teammates, to work closely with his teammates, physically closely, as well as, you know, mentally closely. And that's a big difference. You know, they all get on well in the house. I'm sure they all get on well, that are super competitive, but there's a $200,000 prize fund, as well as all the kudos of winning races and winning this title. So yeah, as soon as they buckle up into their rigs, that's it. Gloves are off, all bets are off. Teammate, no. Everybody is here to win this for themselves. As you say, unless you're sharing the same car, strictly you're not teammates. You're just rivals who happen to be in roughly the same livery, or in this case, exactly the same livery. So
I don't think we're going to end up with a multi-21 situation here, that's for sure. That's what we're saying.
Or a multi-22.
Yeah.
I don't think that's happening. But Sebastian Job, look at him again. Every corner, every braking zone, he is shaping up behind his teammate. So Graham Carroll in 21, Sebastian Job in 22. And Job is absolutely using classic racing driver psychology. Put the car where it shouldn't be. Make him look for you. Because if he's looking for you, it's distracting him from doing what he should be doing, which is using his racing line. And particularly, you know, it's that classic cannonball line job where Sammy Davis Jr., dressed as a priest in the Ferrari, just rips off the rear view mirror. I don't need to see what's behind me. When you're racing, you just don't need to see what's behind you. Concentrate, line and length, on what you're doing. And that's what Osgaard is doing out front. He is just starting to creep away. Tommy Osgaard, just fractional increments, and it's all added up to a second gap now over the two-way battle for second.
I was about to mention that Tommy, another couple of hundredths, about half a tenth quicker on that last lap compared to these two. But, you know, these two drivers, they both used to race in Formula Ford 1600s. I know Sebastian more recently in the scholarship back in 2018. So they've both got real experience on the track. They know what to do. Graham Carroll, of course, a Walter Hayes champion, Walter Hayes Trophy champion. So they're both really good pedalers. They know how to race. They know how to win in single make categories. And these two are showing what they could do out here in these Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars.
There's a great expression, you only need two cars to make a race. These two cars are definitely making a race, but right behind them, Joshua Rogers. Now, if you're Rogers, you're the reigning champion, you've already had a top 4 result in race 1, good points, You've just been eased out of third place, but we've still got 20 minutes to do. What you do now is you do absolutely nothing but think. You figure out where you're going to turn over Sebastian Job on the final lap. You also have your spidey senses tingling. Anytime you see Job moving offline, he might be making a pass. So now, coming down the straight, Job is right behind Carroll. 22 has disappeared behind 21. Carroll goes defensive. Job lunges late down the inside again. And is there going to be contact? Where's the gap? If you're in 92, Joshua Rogers, you're looking for where they're going to go. Couldn't quite get there, but Sebastian Job got the job done. Dive down the inside of Graham Carroll. Inside or outside works. Outside is very high maintenance. If you're leaving yourself exposed to your teammate, he'll just run you off the outside of the corner. So he went inside and he made it stick. And those couple of opening laps where he was missing his braking, he has tidied that up, hasn't he? He's really got that nailed. He knows how to get by into Tarzan. He could yet win this. Back to Max Verstappen. Max is all over the back of Thibaut Casabon now. Thibaut, 18 years old, the youngest driver in the field. And Max, the least experienced pro sim racer, straight up the inside. He knows what a pass looks like and shows Thibaut exactly where his skills lie. And I don't know how much time Max has spent in these cars qualifying for this, because don't forget, when everybody was starting to get their Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup season plan together, Max was very firmly going to be driving Formula One cars. And so he's come in without any of the background that the other 17 qualifiers have got in terms of sim racing. Yes, he does a lot of sim racing, but he hasn't particularly focused on trying to get into this through the winter and into the beginning of the season. So the fact that he's made it through again underlines just how sharp he is. Now, the other thing that's happened at the front of the field, Paul, is as well as Tommy Usgaard starting to pull away, so too immediately in one lap has Sebastian Job. He is now nearly 7 tenths ahead of Graham Carroll, and Carroll is the stopper in the bottle, isn't he? 21, Graham Carroll, our race winner from race 1, is holding up Josh Rogers. Brian Lockwood's right with them. Jeff Giassi is right with them. And you can see how much they're slowing down, because Giassi, with the Brazilian flag on the rear, was clear of Dane Warren, 57. He isn't anymore. And he's brought Alejandro Sanchez with him. Jamie Fluke is there as well. And so too Mac Backham and Alexius Yakala. So that long queue from third on down.
Well, I was about to mention third down to 16th, covered by just under 6 seconds. So that is how long that queue is. It's a sizable queue of traffic for those drivers to be working through. And Graham Carroll, he did qualify 7th, don't forget, in qualifying right at the start of this event. Got put onto the front row with the inverted grid. So definitely Graham maybe not quite got the pace of Joshua Rogers, but it was only a few tenths of a second, so it wasn't like it was a huge chasm of speed, the difference between them. It's only a few tenths, but again, going across the line, looking at the lap times, Tommy Erstgaard just done a 37.527. 37.0 from Sebastian Job that lap, half a second caught in one lap there, Martin.
Yeah, Sebastian is really giving it everything now, because if he doesn't catch Tommy and start to put the pressure on, then the gap's going to be too big in the last couple of laps. On board now with our champion, Joshua Rogers, sweeping out of Hugenholtz, named after Hans Hugenholtz, the man who ran the Royal Dutch Automobile Club, who was so involved in the creation of Circuit Park Zandvoort. Sweeping over Slottermacher and into Skyflax, Skyview. Then you dip down, climb back up again. You can tell it's a real old school roller coaster track. It follows the lines of the dunes through Masters Corner and then tightening. Oh, stop, turn. Into Renault Corner 8 and then down into Turn 9. And again, this turn just like tightens up on you. Physically it doesn't, but it always feels like it, because you're carrying in speed, trying to rotate the car and still looking to get back on the gas as early as possible, because this short straight down here into the S's is where you try and set up that pass. And Rogers all over the back of Graham Carroll now. Sebastian Job is within half a second of the leader, Tommy Østgaard, and that is slipstreaming distance. Hammer down now, revs building, pulling gears all the way out of the Lyondike corner, just running over those rumble strips because you don't want to go any further. Look how close the barriers are there. And here comes Sebastian Job. Now, every time he gets on the brakes here, Paul, he is rehearsing if and by how much he can outbrake Østgaard.
Yeah, he is really getting into his head, and I mentioned it in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge about how you don't want to spend too much time behind the driver in front. You really want to get the move done and out the way, so you don't end up basically following their line and following their braking for too long. So Job will want to get this move done as quickly as possible. He'll preferably want to do it at Tarzan because we've seen him do that a couple of times this race, but it was 0.3 of a second again last lap that he cut out of Tommy Østgaard. So he's got the bit between his teeth right now as the young Englishman, and he's given it absolutely everything through this middle part of this course. He just seems to have the edge through this more technical part of the track.
And I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's why he can make Tarzan work for him, because it does look like he's got the car really well planted on the nose. The other thing, of course, when you are following closely, things start to overheat because there's turbulent airflow going into your radiators, into your cooling ducts, and that is not clean airflow. Like turbulence affects a wing, it affects the cooling. You'll understeer more. These cars aren't hugely aero dependent, but it makes a difference. It all adds up. So the longer you follow him, the more he brings your speed down to his, which is not good, because then you've got nothing to play with. So you've got to make the move, as you say, as early as you can, but without giving him any opportunity then in the remaining quarter of an hour or less as we have now to try and overtake you where his car is stronger. The advantage that the attacking driver has here, Sebastian Job, is that he knows what he's doing and he can see where Østgaard is stronger and weaker. And should he get by, that helps Job. Østgaard doesn't have the same information about his rival, so he's going to have to work that out a little bit later. So the Coanda driver, at the moment, he's leading, but he's losing time, and he isn't going to have the same amount of information to fight back. Again, Sebastian Job is doing a phenomenal job here. The boy from East Grinstead really having a good race, and if he doesn't win it, at the moment, that's going to be a surprise.
Yeah, he's looking everywhere, looking left, looking right. He's trying to get into the mind of Tommy in front. Of course, it was brought up by our colleague here, Connery Maddock, that Tommy Østgaard only won one race last year at Spa-Francorchamps. Here comes Job. Can he hang it? Yes, he can. Østgaard's losing the back end.
Great move in the S's by Sebastian Job. He set that up quite early, and Tommy Østgaard just didn't quite have the handle on it. Through into second has gone Graham Carroll. Through into third has gone the reigning champion Joshua Rogers. Is he on for a podium here? Østgaard will be rattled now because he's got Lockwood right behind him. 43, Brian Lockwood, the American driver, right up behind him. He's going to pile the pressure on, trying to go down the inside. Undercuts Østgaard trying to go around the outside of Rogers, can't get it done. Lockwood didn't have enough traction there either. So huge drama there in the S's, and that is another classic Zandvoort overtaking opportunity. But boy, you have got to throw it up the inside, and that's what Sebastian Job seems to like.
Something has happened to Martin Kroenke. I've seen him dropping down our order, and I do believe he's had a little incident with one of our newer drivers, and that's Max Verstappen, who made the move. It's like turn 2 he made a move. Well, anyway, Martin Kroenke has ended up in a barrier, I could tell you. We'll have a look on a replay. Yeah.
Verstappen down the inside, and Kroenke fights it, but Verstappen's got great drive off the corner, so they go over Gerlach, the left-hander, and then, Max just couldn't hold it and ran out wide, and in the end, Kroenke, I'm afraid, was the innocent party there. So the Vodafone replay showing that Max Verstappen making contact with Martin Kroenke, and Kroenke, the German driver for VRS Coanda Sim Sport, out and into the barriers. That is a tough break for him. Max is up to 12th at the moment. He is 2.2 seconds behind the car in front of him, which is Alexei Usiakala. So he is closing a little, and Usiakala may well have to mind his P's and Q's. Headlights flashing at the back of the queue. Not sure that works in sim racing quite so much, does it? Unless you can actually flash the lights on and off in your rival's sim room. Let's reset our race then. Sebastian Job leads for Red Bull Racing Esport, number 22 car. Last year's third place man in the championship. Graham Carroll, the race one winner. His teammate from Scotland in the number 21 car is second. The champion, Joshua Rogers, VRS Coanda Sim Sport. The Aussie now living in Germany, he lies in third place. And then the man who got the lead in the first corner, Tommy Østgaard, the number 58 car, in fourth, ahead of Brian Lockwood, black, yellow and white, the 43. Then Jeff Chiassi, and the Brazilian seems to be in either in sixth or seventh all the way through both races. So this is going to be a solid weekend for him as well. A little further back, looking at 98, Kevin Ellis Jr. There's Martin Kroenke, still with damage. Through past him goes Jack Sedgwick. Does he? He should do. I think that left front corner is not going to be helping Martin Kroenke with that damage. It'll turn left okay, because that's not what you use the left tyre for. Turning right here is not going to be feeling very comfortable. Right behind Valtteri Alander. All these guys have been passed by Max Verstappen on his charge up from 33rd on the opening lap of our first sprint race up to where he is now 12th. Plenty of action all the way down through the field. Just a little spin for Max Beneke. And again, the innocent victim there, tagged into a spin. Back with Graham Carroll.
Yeah, that was Thomas Tatala who'd got involved in that one as well with Max Beneke. So Beneke not having a good start to his championship, that's for sure, in this opening two races of the season. So he'll be wanting to quickly forget this one. And luckily for the drivers, it's a quick turnaround, because we're back again next week at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya.
One of the most important things you can do in any form of competition, whether it's ballet, whether it's racing, whether it's parallel bars, whatever it is forget the bad days and don't take the good days too seriously either. You've just got to keep looking. And that's really one of the ironic things, drivers on the podium, a couple of minutes of excitement, immediately they come off, analyse this race, move on to the next one. Good, bad or indifferent, you have to leave it behind you mentally and just take out of it what you can. Østgaard, Lockwood. This is the battle for fourth place. They're only half a second behind the reigning champion Joshua Rogers. On board with the American Brian Lockwood. Look at this. This is a great view. Revs rising, just a little bit of rear slip as you drive it out of the Lyondike straight. Now he's in the slipstream. Now we're going to start closing now. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Can he go inside? Can he go outside? Has to go outside. We saw Østgaard going slowly but late. And that's where you ease your rival up onto the curbs. Perfectly legal. Østgaard sort of had the line, if you like, but Lockwood's got more speed at the moment, I think. Now you start the climb, and again, look at the onboard here. Little blind brows everywhere, over the top and dropping down, plunging through the Hunsrück, climbing again, up through the right-hander, Rob Slottermarker, and then over the brow, Skyview, Skyflak, and then dropping down again. Fantastic roller coaster course. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've noticed on the timing sheet we've lost Jeff Chiassi from sixth place. So Jamie Fluke's now up into sixth, Dwayne Warren seventh. What on earth has happened to Jeff? I don't know. We'll have a look on the replay here. Turn 3, Huggen halts, and gets turned around and picked up and over against the wall. That's the race over.
Norbert Mikulits and Ivan Muller know exactly what that's like. They had a similar incident and both ended up in the barriers in last year's World Touring Car Cup. Now then, here is our race leader, number 22, Sebastian Job. And having just said how well Jeff Chiassi was doing, 7th-ish in both races, I did wonder to myself, is there such a thing as a virtual curse of the commentator? It would appear there is.
Yes, there is. I
That's
can tell you.
bad news, because wasn't it me a couple of laps ago that said if Sebastian Jobe doesn't win this, it's going to be a surprise? Oh dear. Meanwhile, back with Østgaard and around the outside, Lockwood. Now, outside, inside, trying to make that work. And there's a good bit of racing tactics. If your rival goes inside, make him go in too deep. Don't commit to the outside early. Sit right behind him. Take some air off that rear wing. Try and make him go in too deep and then be ready to cut back. It doesn't always work. Probably doesn't very often work, but you've got to have these things in your head. Inside the final 5 minutes. Race 2, weekend number 1 of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing for 2020. Circuit Park Zandvoort. It's a Red Bull 1-2. Sebastian Jobe ahead of his teammate, the race 1 winner, Graham Carroll. Reigning champion in 3rd place. And what is Joshua Rogers going to do about the podium? Is he just going to stay where he is? I think he might. Doesn't seem to have the pace of the Red Bull cars. And he doesn't want to get caught by this battle. Tommy Østgaard with the purple. Right behind him, Brian Lockwood in number 43. Great battle for 4th place between these two.
It is fantastic to see this, and it's great to see new drivers into the series, Brian Lockwood specifically, being up at the front here and challenging for some really good points. So you mentioned earlier about how the drivers who had already qualified from finishing in the top 20 last season had the opportunity here to just sit back and wait until the season, whereas the rest of them qualifying, they're spending vital time not just in the seat of the car but also racing the car as well. And there's no substitute for actually racing these vehicles, because then you learn and get into the habit of what works and what doesn't work.
Exactly right. I don't think anybody's been sitting back and relaxing, that's for sure. If you're in the top 20, you want to be at the top end of the top 20 this season. So right from the moment you get the ticket, you are working hard. Jamie Fluke here from Northern Ireland, from County Armagh, in the number 49 car. And Jamie in 6th position, holding off 57, Dane Warren, the Australian. These two just a little bit behind the Østgaard and Lockwood battle, but should there be contact, would either of them get back on before these guys got to them? I doubt it. We're inside the final 3 minutes. The leaders will be almost heading down to the Ari Lyndike corner now to start what might be their penultimate lap as we watch this battle. And by the way, catching these guys, look for the white with orange of Max Verstappen. He is currently in 11th place. In the top 10 is Alexei Yusiakala. He is just half a car length off the back of this queue. Max has still got some ground to make up. 2.3 seconds between him and the top 10. And there he is in the background, car number 69. I'm sure that's the only number that was left. No other reason for that. He's not any kind of a joker, is he? 49, just hanging on in 6th position, and 69 in the back of this queue, or trying to catch the back of this queue. Inside the final 2 minutes, they're lapping 1 minute 37. They'll get this one plus one more before time runs out. So at the end of this, it'll be 2 from home. At the moment,
I was going to say, I think it'll be a tall order for Max to actually catch up to this pack now, unless they start tripping over each other, because he's not been lapping that much quicker than this queue of traffic. So I think he's pretty much signed, sealed and delivered us into that position. But further forward, Brian Lockwood is making some moves on Tommy Østgaard. We just see him in the background there.
Yeah.
He was trying, but no opportunity forthcoming.
No, it looked like Østgaard just drifted out wide, and again Lockwood is inside him again. Didn't quite get the move made. Now that means coming down to the S's, Lockwood is just a fraction further back than he would have wanted. But again, we talked about this with Sebastian Job, how he looked like the car, he got it really planted on the nose, how he can brake deep, how he can still get the car to rotate, to make the turn without just scrubbing away an understeer. And that's what gave him the advantage to get ahead of his teammates, and especially to get ahead of the former leader, Tommy Østgaard, in 58. 37 seconds on the clock. So time is fast running out for Brian Lockwood, but I think Lockwood has got more front end on his car. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed a pass, but it means if he can stick it in somewhere, you've got a better chance of making it work. And I think that Østgaard is very well aware of that. The Norwegian is really trying to keep his line as tight as humanly possible. Just in front, you can see Rogers throwing up the dirt as he cuts the corners across the curbs. These guys will have rehearsed this Zandvoort circuit. Whether they know it or not before the season, whether they like it or not, is neither here nor there. You've got to perform, and they will have done countless laps around this track to make sure that they have a chance of doing so. Final lap for the race leader, Sebastian Job. Final lap in second place for Graham Carroll, and closing a little on him in third, Joshua Rogers. But the potential for a pass is here. Brian Lockwood closing down into the S's. Tommy Østgaard just with enough to keep him out. Yes, Østgaard cuts right to the inside of that left-hand apex, and that is very likely to be the last passing opportunity. So we had a Red Bull Race 1 winner in the form of Graham Carroll. His teammate Sebastian Job from West Sussex is going to claim victory in the main race here at Circuit Park Zandvoort. 2 races in, and his first win of the season in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing 2020. Sebastian Job, the race winner. Teammate Graham Carroll in second. Joshua Rogers, defending champion, on the podium. Martin Kroenke a long way down in 20th place at the end of the race after that contact with Max Verstappen, who ended up in 11th place at the line. Jeff Chiassi, the Brazilian, ended the race 4 laps adrift out of the running, having been in the top 10 in both races. So there is your finishing order for our second race here in Zandvoort. Sebastian Job winning by 2.2 seconds in the end from Graham Carroll. Josh Rogers on the podium, who start his title defence with a very big points haul. Tommy Østgaard, Brian Lockwood, great battle for 4th, ahead of Jamie Fluke, who had his mirrors full of Dane Warren and Alejandro Sanchez, Max Backham, Alexei Usiakala, finishing in the end. How far ahead of the local hero? Max Verstappen was just behind him at the line, in fact. So a good run from Max Verstappen, who started race 1 in the 30s and ended race 2 just outside the top 10. Pretty impressive showing from the Dutch driver on this Dutch circuit. Youngest man in the competition, Thibaut Casibon, finishing in 12th. That is the rest of the top 20. So Paul, the tough breaks were being handed out as much as the prizes here, I think, in this first race weekend. Max Benecke, 27th here, has just had an absolute shocker.
Yeah, the man who finished this championship second place last season, absolute nightmare of an opening round of the championship, and well, I think he'll be happy to just say, right, that's it, that's done, let's move on, next round, let's go to Barcelona and have a much better one. But certainly he will not be happy with his performance there, and getting caught up in a few different incidents. It wasn't the only one, that's for sure, but you know, I was impressed by Gyasi. Actually, I really was. He was able to keep in that battle at the front and to put the pressure on. Just unfortunate what happened down there at Hugenholtz, but really impressive first round. Great to be back in the commentary box on this championship, and I can't wait till next week.
Yes, next week, May the 9th, Saturday, May the 9th, Barcelona. And again, we will have our support race, and then the feature race will be back at 1500 Central European Summertime, 1300 UTC Greenwich Mean Time. And then May 23rd to Donington Park in Great Britain for our third race weekend. Into June, we go to Le Mans on June the 13th, the middle week. And Circuit de la Sarthe, that is not the Bugatti circuit. The Bugatti circuit is the shorter permanent circuit that the bike racers use for the MotoGP and for the 24-hour bike race. Circuit de la Sarthe, that's the public road race that they use just once every season. And from there to the Green Hell, the Grüne Hölle, Nürburgring's Nordschleife, one of the most demanding, challenging, scenic, exciting, terrifying racetracks. Every possible name you can think it's been called. Silverstone at the end of July or mid-July, and then beginning our August run of 3 races in 4 weekends. Road Atlanta, just north of Atlanta, Braselton, Georgia, a fabulous racetrack. Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit for race 8. Full circuit at Spa-Francorchamps for race 9. And then what a great place to start or finish any season. Autodromo Nazionale di Monza in the Royal Park in Monza, just north of Milan in Italy. September the 19th, we will find out who will be crowned champion. The Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing for 2020. And Paul, it's been great to call these first couple of races. I have to say, I'm really, really looking forward to next Saturday and just see who comes out on top at the Circuit de Catalunya.
Yeah, it's great. It's a fantastic series. The mix of tracks that we've got coming up is certainly going to favour certain people more than others. And yeah, it's always an exciting championship. This we found that out last year, and we can only progress forward and see who starts coming to the fore as we go through that championship.
Well, listen, we've enjoyed it. I think it's time to get back to Will and find out how the drivers enjoyed it.
What a race. Couple of races we've actually had this Saturday afternoon. Will Vincent and Connery Maddock in the virtual iRacing studio. Thank you to Martin Haven and to Paul Smith for 2 excellent calls of the races. Well, after all, it's Martin Haven, what do you expect? But we've got some drivers that we're going to start talking to in a moment. Key point though, Connery, Red Bull, they have stamped a marker on this championship. Victory in race number 1 for Graham Carroll, and victory in race number 2 for the English driver Sebastian Job, joined with a 1-2 by Graham Carroll in that feature. And for Sebastian, he's now $1,000 richer. For Graham Carroll, $400 richer.
Yeah, and of course, crucial points to that $200,000 prize pool as well. Sebastian Job, what a drive, especially in that feature race, just scything his way through the field, passing some of the his biggest competitors here on iRacing, and making it seem so simple. That was one of the most impressive drives I've ever seen from him. That Red Bull Racing Esports team, just in general, must have been doing a whole bunch of preparation in the off-season to get to the position where they are right now, because it's looking absolutely stellar for them, with Graham Carroll also winning that first heat race and coming home second in the feature as well. I don't think you could have really asked for a better day for Red Bull.
And you've got to be true and honest about this performance as well. Seb passed 2 drivers to get himself to the front of the field. He passed his own teammate and he passed Tommy Erskine. Now, yes, Erskine had made a slight mistake down at the S. However, Seb was pushing, Seb was there, he was waiting for that mistake, and he capitalised on it.
Yeah, we were, talking about throughout the race, even in the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge, how difficult it is to try and manage an overtake here. But Seb just made it seem so simple against some of the most tough competition. Joshua Rogers isn't an easy competitor to pass. Tommy Erskine is not an easy competitor to pass, and his own teammate of Graham Carroll also, an incredible defender, which is what I said in the pre-show to this race. And he was just the class of the field here today with this feature race win. So that's going to look absolutely amazing coming into the next couple of rounds, because he has that momentum at his back now. He never had any sort of momentum in the first season of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup in 2019. You know, he got off to a horrible start to the season, but now he's got off on the right foot, and the sky's the limit from here.
You stole my M word. I was going to use momentum when we talk to Seb. We'll talk to him anyway. Sebastian Job, the winner of the feature race here in the first round of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. And well, Seb, you had yourself a good race number one. You then got yourself a fantastic feature race. Talk us through it and talk us through how it feels to win the first round of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup.
Hey guys, yeah, it's quite a good feeling. I can't understate that really. I was extremely happy when I crossed the line. Yeah, it started off kind of rough. I'll start with qualifying because I actually I was hoping to try and sandbag a bit and try and get near the front of the grid because I knew it's so difficult to pass on this track. It's just one of those things for this track. But I was looking at the times during my lap and noticed how close everyone was, and I just decided not to risk it. So I ended up P3 and then managed to get a couple of places on the start. Fortunately, I lost out a couple of laps later battling with Brian and fell back. But yeah, and then had what I have to say is one of the best battles of my career with Josh. I've got to give him so much respect for that. It was simply incredible how close we were. Like, we weren't giving any room to each other, and we still didn't crash. It was just ridiculous. So yeah, the first race didn't exactly go to plan. I didn't gain as many places as I hoped, but in the feature race it all just came together. Managed to pick people off one by one, and then finally when I got past Graham I could stretch my legs a bit and chase down Tommy. And then an unfortunate bit of contact. I don't think you could blame either of us there. It was just very hard racing. Tommy said the same to me as well. So yeah, just a bit of a shame that it ends like that. But I think I don't think I was too at fault. So yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, very very good way to start the season. We put in a lot of work over since the last season ended, and it's incredibly nice to see how well it paid off.
And the back end of last season, we really did see you come alive in this series. And a big part of that is that relationship that you've got with that Red Bull Racing Esports organization. And they were joking on the broadcast whether it's going to be a multi-21, multi-22. But how has that experience been working with Graham and working with Patrick Bean over the off-season to get yourself ready for what, in my eyes, is even more competitive than last year?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's definitely more competitive. We've, in a team sense, we've put in a crazy amount of effort. We did a couple of special events, the endurance races, and I think you could sort of see it coming together there. In the Bathurst race, we had some really good pace in the exact same car as this, but we had a crash, unfortunately, while leading. Sebring, we won that, obviously, in a close race, and gradually we've just been improving over the off-season, and now it's come to the first round, and we've managed to put it all together. Just lots more hours, lots more setup work. We're all practicing an incredible amount, and it seems to be paying off. And then on my side, I've completely changed my entire setup. All my equipment's completely different and upgraded, so that's helped big time as well.
It's just 1 week before we do it all over again at Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, for the second of our rounds in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. What's your thoughts as we head ourselves to what is a very, very different type of racetrack?
I can't wait for it. We actually raced there a couple of weeks ago in the pre-season test, and obviously because we knew it was round 2, we put in a lot of effort, and the pace was very strong there, so I'm very excited for that, and yeah, ready to do it all again.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the number 22, the Englishman Sebastian Job from Red Bull Racing Esports. And well, I could go on for about the next 4 hours about how impressive that performance was, Connery. I think really we saw it many years ago in Grand Prix racing. We saw that first glimmer that we knew that Seb could well become a champion. Last end of the season, the last part of last season even, we saw him doing some fantastic performances. I just think that there's a new leader in town, and it's called Red Bull Racing Esports by the look of it, and Seb is at the forefront of that.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant to witness, and you're absolutely right. When it came to the end of the last season, Job was able to get those results up onto the board, but unfortunately for him in 2019, it was too little too late for him. He was still able to recover into a good points finishing position, but not quite able to challenge Josh Rogers or Max Benecke for the actual Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup champion. He wasn't able to challenge for that title, but now I think this year is going to be very, very different. Of course, we're only, technically 2 races into this season, and it might be a little bit too early to be talking about things like that, but if Job can extrapolate this trend over the next couple of races, then my word, I don't think there's anything going to stop them.
And I'm going to do my quick Al Michaels moment, because he always likes to talk about the favourites. And coming into this race, Seb was 3rd favourite to win. The driver who won the sprint race and came home 2nd in the feature race was, I'm going to call it 13th favourite. But I tell you what, he has had an absolute great day today. Graham Carroll, you've got to be impressed with a P1 and a P2.
Yeah, if someone told me I'd get the positions coming into this weekend, I'd shake their hand off. So yeah, over the moon. Kind of mucked up the feature race at the start by myself, but to walk away with 1st and 2nd today, yeah, very pleased.
We talked to Sebastian a couple of moments ago about the work that your team's been doing over the off-season to get yourself prepared for this championship, because we could talk for, days about how the start of the 2019 season did not go your team's way. What's been different in terms of preparing for this season compared to preparing for 2019?
We've all kind of got our own little ways that we wanted to improve on last year. Personally, I struggled with the Porsche last year. I was more into sort of the F1 cars and wings, slicks and wings kind of thing. But so I ended last year on a bit of a low and just wasn't willing to do another year like that. So just over the winter, got some new equipment, put the work in. And yeah, as a team, me, Patrick and Seb, it's on another level how the practices went. So really pleased with that. And yeah, we're just going to keep doing it all season long, and hopefully we can keep the results up.
Well, I'm going to correct myself. You're 17th favourite heading into this event, according to my source, which I'm not allowed to name for legal reasons. However, with such a good showing here today, what's that confidence level as we head over to Barcelona in a week's time?
Yep, very high, very high. Even sort of pre-season pace comparing to guys like Patrick and Seb. Compared to last year, I was a couple of tenths off all the time, where this time we're sort of we're very close on time. So even that's a big confidence boost. And today, yeah, skyrockets the confidence. So straight back to Barcelona, maybe a day off doing some F1 esports tomorrow, and then back to it on Monday. Practice starts, and then yeah, looking forward to Barcelona. I prefer that combo a bit more with the car and track. So yeah, it should be a good one.
Well, thank you very much. Graham Carroll, 2nd place, the Scotsman in the number 21 Red Bull Racing Esports car. And, well, Connery, I've been doing my Al Michaels impression for the last couple of minutes, but if there was to be the odds for a Red Bull Racing 1-2, I mean, it would have been high at the start of the season. I think that those odds would be absolutely slashed now heading into Barcelona.
Yeah, I think they are as well. Like I said, the amount of preparation they've done in the off-season has been great. We even saw in the media days, sort of the pre-season races, Sebastian Job was also up there and fighting in amongst those top positions. And it seemed like he's been able to convert that form into the racing here today when all of the pressure is on his shoulders. He wasn't gifted this feature race win on a silver platter. He started in 5th place. Yes, like you said, it was a mistake from Østgaard to be able to put him into that position, but still, it's a great run for him. Carroll as well, just the mental fortitude to hold on to one of those top spots as well. It wasn't the very top spot, which is where he started in the feature race, but to keep the entire train behind him for a second place finish, that in its own right deserves a bit of a shout out as well, because Carroll, a great defender on the best of occasions, and he's shown that this is a pretty good one as well.
Rounding out your podium is the Australian driver by nationality, now racing, of course, in the team house in Germany, just outside of Cologne. Joshua Rogers claiming third place here today in the feature. And well, Josh, on one hand, I've got a feeling that you're going to say you're being a bit disappointed by today. On the other hand, you've got some solid points on the board to start the season, which is equally always important. How are you feeling?
Yeah, hey guys. Honestly, I think there's definitely mixed emotions. There was probably a little bit more on the table. I kind of handed P3 to Sebi in the feature there, kind of on a silver platter right at the beginning. But I mean, nonetheless, though, the speed was solid. I think we've still got a little bit of work to do to catch up to the Red Bull guys. They clearly put the effort in, and they were paid the results and the success for it. So that was fantastic for them. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we've got good points. They're on the board now. I think to any championship, making sure that you can get off to a good start is important. It's much easier to try and kind of gain little bits or kind of be ahead from the beginning rather than having to try to catch up from mistakes. So all in all, to be honest, positive, and I think we can take a lot of things into the next round, as well as kind of improving on the car a little bit from here. I think running with those guys, we learnt a lot. So I think honestly, I'm looking forward to the next one. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, and talk us a little bit about the change that you've had over the off-season, of course, is moving from what is still quite sunny Australia over to what is just slowly warming up Germany, just near Cologne, in the team house with your friends and, of course, teammates over at VRS Commander Sim Sports. Conor made a really good point earlier on, saying you're not racing at 2:00 in the morning anymore, but how does it feel to be in this new environment, working and racing under these amounts of pressure?
To be honest, obviously it's very, very different for us being able to fill. Obviously it's very different being able to kind of be here with teammates. But at the end of the day, I think, sorry if you just caught a little bit of that. But it's not really changing things too much. I guess we're still kind of in our rig facing the wall, so it's not like we're getting distracted by things anywhere. But I think practice and preparation is a little bit different now. I think we can certainly kind of fuel ourselves off each other to kind of boost our motivation and work just that little bit harder. It's much easier to communicate as well. Obviously, being on the same time zone. So I think it's honestly been entirely positives from now on. I think there's still a little bit to get used to, so that'll be a little bit easier as we come through the rest of the season. But it's been a fantastic opportunity so far, and thanks to Virtual Racing School and obviously Kona Sim Sport for the opportunity to be able to do that.
That was team principal Philip Stam that you heard in the background being told off by Joshua Rogers. But Josh, before we let you go, next week, it's Spain. It's a very different racetrack to what we've seen here today, especially with those high curbs at certain parts of the racetrack. I'm thinking more about sector number 3. What's your thoughts heading into there? And is there the opportunity with such a short turnaround to move up the podium to second, to first? Or is it a case of doing the best you can and then reset after Barcelona?
No, to be honest, I think in the next week, there's plenty of time to be able to make some changes. I think as long as we debrief well after this one and kind of look at things from every different perspective, we can definitely kind of probably work at things a little bit quicker than before. The test race at Barcelona a few weeks ago, sure, kind of gave us a rough idea of everyone's pace, but you were never really 100% sure. But I think after this one, we definitely will definitely work hard behind the scenes, even harder, obviously the next race being in the next round, or the next weekend, sorry, to be able to try and improve things as best as we can. But at the end of the day, too, I think we've still got solid enough speed that, if worst situation, I think we can still try and manage, kind of the top 8, top 5 positions. So I think we're definitely going to be putting in the hard work, but I don't think the time frame really impacts things at all. No.
Well, thank you very much. That was the number 92 car of Joshua Rogers, the Australian driver now residing in Germany. And you've got to be, when you look at this, Connor, you've got to think about it in two ways, because yes, Josh didn't win the race, but he still got a good haul of points early, especially when you compare the points that he has to his closest title rival of last year in Max Benecke, who has somewhere in the region of 0.
Yeah, we have to get the calculators out to work out exactly how many points Benecke has at the end of this, but it's not great for him. But for Rogers, like you said, at least he got to the end of both races and in decent points-paying positions as well. We can't look past that. So I don't think he's going to be too concerned about how this first race day has gone. Crucial points in the bag, getting your season off to a good start. That's all important. And we saw during last season that the consistency was very much key to success. With those drivers that had fallen to the back of the field in some of those middle rounds, not quite able to try and recover from that points deficit coming into the later rounds of the season. So, Josh is not going to be too concerned here. He'll just plow on as he always does, and then look to Barcelona to try and get back onto that top step.
Coanda Sim Sports and their organisation, their wider organisation, because of course a lot of the big teams are now split up into sub-teams, but the Coanda Sim Sports stable getting 3rd and 4th place here in the first round of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. I had something on my screen now, which is completely different. Would have got me into a lot of trouble if I said that one as a sponsor. However, Tommy Ersgaard coming home 4th place, driver in the number 58 car from Norway. And Tommy, you were leading at points in race number 2 here today. You got yourself a pass for the race lead. What happened at the S?
Yeah, first of all, it was a great race, and I'm really happy to be up there. I was leading, and Sebastian was catching me quickly. He was a little bit quicker. He tried to make a move around the outside, and he made it work. And I think there was a little bit of netcode just as we touched, but nothing major. I think it's a racing incident, so that's just part of racing, hard racing. So well done to Seb. He had amazing pace, and I'm really, really happy coming home 4th in the end. So
yeah, you just missed out on one of the cash money prize points positions. However, in terms of the championship, you've got to admit it's a good start and a good solid foundation. You're currently sitting 4th place in the championship with 59 points. I mean, that's going to be a good start in terms of building momentum, as we've only got 1 week between now and Spain.
Yeah, definitely. I think this series, it's so tight, so every single point really matters, and just being consistently up there is what it's all about. So I'm really, really happy to start the season strong, and I've worked really, really hard to be as prepared as I can for this race. So I gotta thank all my Coanda teammates for putting in the effort. It's been fantastic practicing together, and we're off to solid start. We should be winning, so we will make sure that we work hard for the next round at Barcelona. And I also want to thank all our sponsors, Virtual Racing School, VRS, Android Design, and RaceBots. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Even Management, who have really helped me prepare for this round personally. So thanks to all the guys in Even.
It only took 3 drivers and someone learnt the new procedure. Well done. I'm proud of you. Now, I'm having a look through our data sheets, and under least favourite track in 2020, you have Barcelona.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the test race there didn't quite go that well. I qualified P18, so I didn't quite feel confident for that track, but I mean, the track overall is cool, so hopefully putting in the effort this week, I can change that in the document for next year, maybe.
Well, good luck. We'll see you in a week's time at Barcelona. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Tommy Erskard in the number 58 car for Co-Anda Sim Sports. And he's a happy chap, it seems, right now, Connery. And I think that's important because he has got so much potential. I've seen so many good, fun races with Erskard in there. And there's a little point that the viewers should probably know a little bit more about, that he's the only sim racer who is a part of the Team Norway, the Norwegian Automobile Sport Federation, elite athletes in motorsports.
Yeah, he is. So, doing things even in the background there, Tommy Erskard to, try and deliver his brand, I suppose. But, Tommy's always been one of those racers, like you said, has always had that potential to be something quite special. And we're starting to see him really come to a forefront now. He did pick up, remember, that feature race win at Spa last season with a last lap pass over Patrick Holtzman at the time. So, he has the potential in him to go and chase for these race wins. It was almost there for him here today, but unfortunately he cracked under a little bit of pressure. But we all go through those sorts of learning phases, I suppose, when trying to race at the top level of competition.
Yeah, and our final of our interviews here is fifth place. It is the driver in the number 43 car representing Racecraft Esports, and I must say, I do love the little gold trim on that car. It is Brian Lockwood. And Brian, well, first of all, you've got yourself a top 5 in the feature race of the Esports Supercup. You got to be impressed and happy with that.
Oh, I'm incredibly happy, Will. I really am. This is my first race in the Super Cup, and just wow. I put so much work into this result, and I'm really happy all those hours paid off in a big way on my debut. But I couldn't have done it without the people I was working with. Jeff Giassi, Red Bull Esports, Marco Nurmello, Luca Crisavi of Racecraft Esports all helped me out with improving my driving. So yeah, I mean, it's really all thanks to those guys that I was able to get this result.
So in terms of, you did what many other people did. You gave us a long bunch of information at the start of the season, and you basically said you wanted to just get a top 20 this season. I'm assuming all of a sudden you want to set your goals a little bit higher.
Well, the main goal is staying the same. I want to finish top 20. I don't want to get ahead of myself. This was certainly a good showing, but I put 65 hours of driving time into practicing for this one, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do that much for every race. So we'll see how the season goes, but certainly going to be looking for more top 10s, top 5s, and maybe even some podiums or wins.
And next week, it's a short turnaround to Circuit Barcelona Catalunya, which, of course, you ran in the kind of media day race. But how are you looking forward to that in a week's time? Because it's not as flowing as what we have here at Zandvoort. It's a little bit more stop-start, a little bit more riding the curbs. Is that something that you're ready for?
Well, we'll find out. I think I improved a lot in the practice that I did for this race. So hopefully I can carry that over to my previous experience at Barcelona. And, as you said, different type of track, different types of corners. But hopefully I'll be able to bring the same kind of pace I did today.
Well, thank you very much then. From Tallahassee, Florida, Brian Lockwood in the number 43 car, and he gets himself a P5 on his series debut here in the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup. I've done it again. I need to get rid of that graphic up on my screen, which is confusing me right now. But yes, Brian Lockwood getting himself 5th place in the first round of the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. And of course, for those of you who missed it earlier on, we're going to have Sebastian Job $1,000 richer by winning the feature race. Graham Carroll $400 to the good by coming home 2nd place. Joshua Rogers will get himself a total of $200 for coming home in third. Not bad for an afternoon's worth of racing. And again, it's a part of the $200,000 prize pool that is on offer, with $50,000 going to the series champion. And Connery, we've seen some great, absolutely incredible racing today. And one thing I will say is actually it's much more competitive, yes, on one hand than I thought, but we didn't have as many incidents during the race as I thought we might have done.
Yeah, and I think the drivers will actually agree with you, at least for those drivers in the sort of front half of the field. I doubt the drivers towards the back will be wouldn't really agree with that. But, you know, it's been a lot cleaner than we have previously seen. That is for sure. Everyone just, you know, turning things down just a notch, but still keeping that same intensity that we've come to expect from this series, which is absolutely fantastic to see. It could be also due to the fact that everyone knows that this is the first round of the season and they just want to get to the end and then maybe go for a couple more aggressive moves a little bit later on in the season. But for now, everything looks so positive, and you know, it just goes to show why this is the best sim racing esports competition that there is out there. No doubt.
Yeah, and just having a look through some of the other results, we've got a couple of people I want to talk about. First of all, Dane Warren, P number 7, incredible debut into the series.
Yeah, absolutely, you know, incredible. And I know I said, you know, even in the, you know, directly after the race, that he was one of those drivers that has really surprised me coming into this. Of course, he had to go through the entire qualifying season, so he has experience with the current state of the car, you know, at his back, so he can use that to his advantage because he's raced this car week in, week out during that qualifying series. But to see him convert that sort of pace into the highest level of competition, that is absolutely incredible. So I'm really interested to see what he can do in the next couple of rounds of the season, and whether or not he'll actually have a bit of a shot at the championship. I think he's going to be on the outside looking in. I'm certainly not going to say anything's for certain, you know, after round number 1, but he could be a player.
And then you've got to think about Team Redline. They had some good performances here today. I want to talk a little bit more about the opposite end of the table in a bit. But Alexei Yakola, he finished himself inside the top 10 today. P number 11, Max Verstappen, coming home in a solid position. You've got to remember that Max essentially worked himself up from a not-so-great qualifying to a middle-of-the-road race number 1, and then gaining 10 positions in race number 2.
Yeah, you know, it's brilliant work, but we've come to expect that from Max Verstappen, just, you know, due to the name value. You know, you see Max Verstappen, you know, he's going to be moving his way forward in these sorts of races, and he showed that here today, gaining 10 positions in the feature race. But you have to say, though, still, with that in mind, Will, you have to be disappointed if you're Redline coming out of this race, because you didn't get anywhere near the top 5 positions, which is where they would have expected to be in this series. They had drivers, you know, retire from this race. They had Max Benecke have problems. You know, you see other drivers further down the field that just really did not get going in this one. So Redline are going to have a hard, long think before Barcelona and try and figure out what went wrong here, because, you know, another couple of races like that and all of their drivers are out of the championship.
Yeah, and, well, thankfully you said it, so I don't have to. But I will agree that having Max Benecke with a grand total of 0 points in the championship after the first 2 races of the season, that is certainly something he was not looking forward to. Of course, technically, Benecke drives the Porsche 24 car by Redline, so not a good showing, unfortunately, for that car at the start of this season. Couple of kind of like middle of the road performances I kind of seen here today as I continue to look through the results. Apex Racing, they seem to have had, you know, some good finishes. Jamie Fluke getting himself a P number 6 here, but as a team, I'm thinking that they were probably hoping to get at least one more car inside the top 10.
Yeah, I think Kevin Ellis Jr. was pretty strong coming into this one. He did actually have a bit of a recovery drive inside that feature race from P22 up to P6, from P28, excuse me, up to P17 there for Kevin Ellis Jr. So he had a bit of recovery. But remember, he was the driver that tangled with Max Benecke in race number 1. So he was sort of filed down the order as a result of that. So it's a similar sort of situation to the red line driver there. But I gotta say though, Jamie Fluke coming away with a solid finish, and he was missing so many of those last season. He was one of those drivers like Sebastian Job that had a lot of pace, but just simply couldn't get it to the checkered flag completely and utterly cleanly, and he's done so here today, so that's a positive for the Apex team.
Yeah, and final thoughts here about some of these drivers is that they are, don't forget, as Martin said earlier on, in that position where the first thing you want to do is score some points. That's the important first thing to do. And I think, Connolly, that is what a lot of these drivers have been looking to try and do here today. Get some numbers into that points table and then start moving up where you can.
Yeah, especially at a track where it's so difficult to overtake. You know, that means that you're probably not going to be as daring going for some of the moves. And I think that mindset sort of settled into some of the drivers' psyches here today. You saw those little looks down the inside of turn 1, those little looks into turn 3, but on the vast majority of cases, nothing came of it. But if you ask Sebastian Job, it really came off quite well for him. But I think at Barcelona, I think we'll see a little bit of a mindset change, because the first round is now in the bag for all the drivers. No matter whether you did well or you did poorly, you know, that's the baseline that you now have to work from, and now you have to build on that throughout the season. And race day number 2, shall we say, since we have 2 races, that's going to be perhaps a little more action-packed than we've seen here today. And I say that with fingers crossed and tapping wood that we don't get too much contact, but I think it'll be fantastic racing regardless.
Indeed so. There's a look at the top 10 up on your screen one more time. Sebastian Job claiming victory by 2.2 over Graham Carroll at the end. Joshua Rogers rounding out your podium. Tommy Erskard, P4. Brian Lockwood in 5th. Jamie Fluke, Dane Warren, Alejandro Sanchez, Mac Backham, and Alexei Usiakola round out your top 10. Gonna get some very quick final thoughts, if they are around, from our commentary team. First of all, Paul, great race number 1, or race meeting number 1, but we're gonna head ourselves to do it all again in 7 days' time.
Yeah, it was thrilling racing. We're going from this track, a bit of a narrower track, to the wide open spaces, technical track of Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya. It's going to be thrilling stuff. And I will say, Brian Lockwood and also Jeff Giassi were my 2 picks of the people who had come through the qualifiers to be in part of this championship. So I'm looking forward to see how they get on, but also how the rest of them get on next week.
And Martin, I hope you've had the time to make yourself a cup of tea after all of that, but what's your first thoughts on, your final thoughts even, on commentating on your first iRacing Esports special event?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for holding my hand. It's fantastic, and actually it's no different from being at a racetrack and watching on the monitors, because the racing looks exactly like racing looks, and they are racing each other. And you know, some of the guys may even be in the same room racing each other and like throwing glances across going, you just did that. I know most people aren't, but you know, it's impressive stuff. It's impressive stuff, and we understand exactly how hard it is to be good at anything. It's practice. It's more practice, and when you finish practicing, you continue practicing. And for me, actually, a lot of the names I don't know, because I haven't done a lot of sim racing before. This is my first. But see who half the viewers probably were looking for, Max Verstappen, ended up, on the door of the top 10. I think that's quite impressive. I said at the beginning, this was not his plan for the season. I don't think he was ever signed up to do this. I think he was signed up very much to be racing a Formula 1 car instead. However, clearly he's got the ability to turn his hand to a great number of things. And pointed out as well in the commentary that Sebastian and Graham Carroll have also raced real cars as well. So there is definitely a crossover and it's not something that you would find in a first-person shooter. Nobody goes and joins special forces after playing, Dark Ops. But this does translate. Yes, the physics is slightly different, but, racing mentality is racing mentality. And all of the things I expected to see in a normal Super Cup race, which I've been covering for probably more years than I care to mention, you saw here. They're doing exactly the same. They're playing the same mental games with their rivals. They're learning from their rivals, who is, who isn't strong, where they are, where they aren't strong. And that paid off in the end. Sebastian Job had a car well set up for this circuit. And when we go to Catalonia, as everybody's pointed out, it's a very different circuit. It's a much more modern Grand Prix circuit. It is much faster. And in the Mobile One Super Cup races that we've done there over the years, it's had some pretty impressive racing, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works out as well. So yeah, everybody, thank you very much for making my entry into sim racing as trouble-free as humanly possible.
Well, thank you, Martin, and thank you to Paul, who have been leading you on commentary this afternoon on the first race meeting of the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. We do want to very quickly apologise for some of the issues that we had technically at the start of this broadcast. There were things completely outside of our control. Thank you to the guys that helped to scramble and get us onto a backup recovery plan. We'll make sure all the boxes are ticked before we head ourselves to Catalonia in 7 days' time. Thank you, of course, also to Connery Maddock, who is your lead commentator for the Porsche Esports Sprint Challenge and has been sat with me in self-isolation in the virtual booth over the course of the last hour and a half. And also to Tyler Maxson on production, and Hugo Louise, Drew Adamson and Cisco Scaramuza working behind the scenes to keep me, if slightly sane, at least slightly sane. But with that, we would like to say thank you so much for being a part of our coverage here today on iRacing. The first round of the 2020 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercups is in the books, and it's all about Red Bull Racing. Graham Carroll won the sprint race. Sebastian Job won the feature. He is now $1,000 richer, and we'll see whether that momentum will carry on to Catalonia in just 7 days' time. We'll see you all next time for another edition of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. My name is Will Vincent, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye from Zandvoort.